Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash.
Yeah. Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you. That was...
And welcome everybody to the Libertarian Podcast Review. We're here. I tried a little different thing today. So just some background info. If you guys that do podcasts, you can now go stream to multiple locations using like StreamYard. They just allowed you to do it to Instagram. So I was trying to set it up. That's why I did the 30-second thing in there. I went over there. The problem is you have to click the go live on that one, and then it plays the volume. So it's delayed, and so it's in my ear. So I had to cut it off. So it's literally 30-second countdown over there, and then nothing. Anyway, welcome everybody. We are an early start. Is this an early start? It's 4 o'clock Pacific. I think that's what I said. I'm not muted. Everything's good to go. Welcome everybody. I hope you're getting ready for Christmas, Kwanzaa, Festivus, whatever you do. We do Christmas here in this house. We are not a bunch of degenerates. Speaking of degenerates, there was a podcast. I don't know if I'm going to get into this. Maybe I'll talk about it sometime. Kyle Matovic, Brandy, Dave Smith, and Ryan Connell, I think his name is. They were they did this show about marriage and stuff last night. There was an issue about statistics for divorce. Everyone says 50% of all marriages end in divorce. It's not correct. And there was some debate about that I was in the chat going, look, people, I'll just do this real quick, and then we'll get to the main event tonight, which, by the way, Dave Smith was debating 3 people on there last night. He does very well. I'm in agreement with him on a lot of things. The statistics is 50% of all marriages in divorce. It's actually lower than that. It's been decreasing over time. I don't know if people aren't getting married as much. That isn't the point. The point is how they do this statistics is if you get divorced and then you get remarried and you get divorced and then you get remarried and then you get divorced, that happens a lot. And those people are put in the same bucket. But it's more like 70% of most marriages never end in divorce. It's the ones that get divorced, they get remarried and get divorced and get remarried. Those ones just churn themselves over and they muddy up the statistics. So if you are going to get married and stay married, that's what it is. Okay, Tyler is still black-pilled after the state of millennials. Here's what was funny about that. Kyle was the youngest one, and then this girl's like 35, and she's talking like a 20. My 17-year-old has more sense, and I think it shocked him that some of the older people were. But whatever, live your life. That's the way it is. That's why we have libertarians. Okay. By the way, crack one open. It's 4 o'clock for me on the Friday. Okay, Dave Smith. By the way, I'm going to a deep dive on some Dave Smith stuff. And he's done a lot of debates. We all know this. And I found this one debate where he goes in the Comedy Cellar, and it is the best one by far. Okay, I know he just did a debate with Will Chamberlain, and that one bores me. Will is a fuddy-duddy. And there's so much, and we'll get into this, but that one was on Michael Malice's show. It didn't, I got halfway through and I'm like, I've already heard Will's pathetic attempts on this before. The Noam Dworman, and we'll talk about who Noam Dworman is, was the best one. Why? Because it showed a few things about Dave, which we'll get here, but it also exposed some of the, Noam Dworman, okay, Comedy Cellar. It's a comedy club in New York, Manhattan. Where all the top comedians perform. It was founded in 1982 by then stand-up comedian and television writer-producer Bill Grunfest. It's located in Greenwich Village. What else does it say here? The club is owned by Noam Dworman, who inherited it from his late father, Manny, in 2003. It's being booked by Esty Aderam. You need to know that Esty, who has developed the club's talent for nearly 4 decades. The business share the same menu, kitchen, and staff as the Olive Tree Cafe. Okay, cool. That's good stuff to know. So that's I couldn't get much on Noam himself, but he will present that himself. Okay, let's jump right into it because I got a lot of clips here, people. So what I want to do is make sure that we get to most of them when we can. But other than that, hang in. We're going to be here for a bit tonight. And so in the chat, let me know if you don't hear this. But let's start off with the introduction. By the way, and I'll play a clip here, and they play a clip as well, which is Dave Smith. They talked about him on the Comedy Cellar a little while ago, and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, let's do this, though, because I need to be a little more focused. Okay, ready, go.
Debate where everybody gets along, but I think there's going to be a lot of
1.25 speed up. Yep, sorry.
No,
First of all, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Second of all, I want to clear the air because you were very unfair to me. I sound like Trump. You're very unfair. You're very unfair to me, but I don't think it was intentional. But for your audience, I want to clear the air. So I went and got the little clip of what it is that I'd said about you. I don't know if you've ever seen it to this day.
I responded to you on Twitter.
Well, you said that I was self-absorbed or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, let me play it. Let me play
something like that.
Yeah, but let me play the clip because
something
now I'll just give a little background on this clip. I don't like to talk. 1 second. I don't even like. You got to play it on the screens too here so we can see it. I don't even like to talk about such things as we talk about on this thing. Dan has some sort of passive aggressive tick where he will literally bring up something which he knows is uncomfortable for me because I don't even like to talk about people like in the comedy world on the show. It's not something I'm comfortable. And you will see on this thing. You don't know me well enough, but you'll see. But she'll recognize it. These long pauses where I close my eyes and I'm trying to say, what can I say here? To not, to be careful. So good. This is when I just got back from Vegas. I saw the Legion of Skanks. I don't know if you were there.
I was there.
And I was extremely impressed. And I said over and over, and by the way, I'm also responsible, you don't know this, for the fact that Min Comedy was live streaming you guys. I'm the one who talked them into it.
A lot of self-promotion.
Because I thought that, I recognize you guys have a great following. So anyway, so Dan brings up Legion of Skanks. So go ahead, play. Is it at 0? I always get confused because I screenshot it. Yeah, go ahead. Play it.
anything. Is there a through line?
Well, I don't want to get it wrong because if you get it wrong, you could be accused of saying something bad about them, which is the last thing I'd ever want to do because I'm so impressed with what they've accomplished. But I think it's a Rogan-y
so what are they?
group. A lot of these guys are on Rogan all the time, which is that's a wide net. First of all, they say they're not woke, right? They say a lot of things that you're not supposed to say. They're politically kind of libertarian, maybe not. I don't know if that applies to all of them, but definitely applies to some of them. And I'd say that the audience is mostly male. At least it was in Vegas. I don't.
Who are the main skanks? It's Big J. Ogerson, Ari Shaffir, I guess. I don't know.
Luis Gomez.
I think he.
I can answer that for
Jay
you.
Gomez. Ari Shaffir. Go ahead, Michael.
It's Legion of Skanks is their podcast. It's Dave Smith, Luis Gomez, and Big J. Ogerson.
Dave Smith, by the way, is somebody I wanted to have on this podcast. I don't know if he has any interest in doing it. He is a comic that has become sort of a political guy.
Now, can you pause it there for just 1 second?
There's a few. Dave Smith, I think, is angry at me.
Now, Dan knows that I already felt that you were angry. Dan knows this. I've said it to him before. So when he brings that up, it's not naively. He knows now I have to say this. So go ahead, continue. Continue.
Yeah. Why?
Because.
Now look at me, struggling.
You don't use them?
No, don't stop it.
Would you use them? Should you use them?
This is the thing. These guys are. I mean, humans. What am I trying to say? There are some people out there who, when we had a chance to book them, we didn't book them, and we got that wrong in some way or right, and the reality has changed, and some of them have become very big. So Dave Smith is somebody that we did look at, and for whatever reason, we didn't book him. A huge miss, huge miss. But I feel like these guys, no matter what, have a little bitterness towards the place, towards me, towards SD. I don't know, and that's unfortunate because, I'm quite admiring of all of them.
Okay, so that's what I said. Huge miss. It's actually the way I felt.
Okay, I'm not gonna go through every single look. It's a 2 hour 40-minute debate here. So there's just 3 main aspects of this. Okay, one is the comedy stuff, a little bit of libertarian stuff thrown in. Then they go Ukraine, and then they go Israel. Now, you're right. Then they did clarify who it was. So Noam does a lot of research, as he'll talk about here. But he gets a few things wrong with a lot of comments. Now, look, I'm very appreciative of what Noam does here, which is he pushes back on Dave in a much different way than like Laura Loomer. And if you saw the debate with Laura, that was pathetic. One, she's just not bright at all. I mean, not at all. And she's bombastic and she's pathetic and looks a little odd. Noam may look a little odd and he may be very confident, but he's got back in the day, he's shielded with such a bias from being that he grew up I think in Israel. So there's always a problem here. And this is what I do appreciate about Dave Smith, because you get a lot of people on the spectrum. They've got a lot of things right. And then this one situation, they just can't bring themselves to any of the right stuff. Okay, let's keep going on here. Dave does respond to that. And there's going to be a lot of gotchas in here that Noam's going to throw at him over the time. We're going to try to catch as many as we can. Dave, responds here.
Oh, well, listen, I wasn't like furious about it or nothing. I didn't feel like you were like horrifically insulting me or something. But I guess what it seemed like you were saying was there's like, oh yeah, Dave is bitter toward me and resents me for over a decade ago, me not passing him at the Cellar, which is just not true. And I've never said anything like that. I've never like publicly brought up that I was upset about this. And I have a lot of flaws, far too many to list, but I'm not one of those guys. I'm not like a bitter, there's a lot of that in comedy, like a lot of comedians who are very kind of like feel wronged and bitter and resentful. And I hate that. That's not me at all. So I kind of felt like you were publicly saying I am that guy. And the truth is I'm a very grateful person. It's something I work very hard on being. But like I have a great family and I love my job and I make good money at it. And I feel very blessed. I'm in the top 1% of like the most blessed people.
That's nothing. I'm top 0.1%.
There you go. Okay. So what I thought was interesting there was, remember, he did post out a clip of this and Dave on Twitter basically said, I don't know, you're living in your own head. You're kind of stuck on yourself. And there's nothing in there that gives Noam any kind of clearance. I mean, Dave's point is kind of like, yeah, I never talked about you, therefore I'm living in your head. It's a bizarre thing to do. Okay, now I want to recap and go back because Dave at some point talks about this, but this is from the original show that clip came from. We're doing a little meta stuff here, but they go on about Dave and then they talk about another thing, which is doing your own research. And that is somewhat important. And I give Noam some credit here, but listen to what people think about others being able to do their own research. Think of COVID, think of any of these other things, and how they kind of think of you, or if you're not an elite. Here's what the thinking is.
A name for himself. With Dave Smith, I do remember that he auditioned in front of ST and we didn't book him, and whatever. But I listen to him now do his interviews like on Reason Magazine and stuff like that, and I'm impressed that he's become something so formidable.
Well, look, I've only interacted with Dave Smith on Twitter. When I said
Twitter's not a good way to.
Well, I said that I talk about people that do their own research, and I said, well, people that do their own research, if they weren't told that the Earth revolves around the sun, they wouldn't be able to figure it out for themselves, and yet somehow they're able to figure out that global warming is wrong, or that various things. And he quote tweeted me and said, this is the kind of elitist thinking about bashing people that do their own research, whatever. And it got thousands and thousands of responses. I mean, I don't know if it did me any good overall, but that was the recent interaction I had with Dave Smith. So in any
What
case,
do you mean people shouldn't do their own research?
Well, I don't mean people shouldn't do their own research. I mean, people.
What do you mean, Dan?
People can't do their own research for most things. I mean, the example that I cited was, do you know what the speed of light is, for example?
My son Manny does.
Yeah. Did he do his own research? Did you do your own research?
Yes, he
could you do your own research? Did you replicate them?
Doing your own research doesn't mean you have to do the experiment that measures the speed of light.
But fine. But then why the people that have done their own research on global warming, what research have they done? 90% of the climate scientists say it's real. Unless you're in Greenland taking ice core samples, you're not doing your own research. You're.
But I can read all the published data of people that have done this research on the speed of light, and deduce if I think that that's correct or not, right? So then once you have it, and it's a law of nature, so to speak, scientific law, then you can transform that elsewhere. You can take that, basically like in law we call it judicial review. You just understand it, and it's common knowledge, and you go from there. Okay, let's keep going with this guy.
You're looking at the article.
This is what I think it is, Dan.
that refute it and saying, no, I agree with that. I mean, it's not legitimate.
I would say that most people who are doing their own research that we know about, the Alex Berenson types, they're doing cherry picking. They're essentially scouring the internet for things which back them up or don't really back them up, but they can pass off as backing them up.
Okay, that's to me interesting because I think Noam, look, he praises himself multiple times in this interview, and if you watch one with Matt Taibbi, same thing. Like I've read everything there is to read on this subject, and I think he does, but I also think he cherry picks those kind of things. Okay, let's go back to this. I just thought that was a good setup, understanding of kind of where these two guys are here, and then mostly Noam. Now let's go back. Dave kind of talks a little bit. We'll talk about what libertarianism is, and then the first gotcha coming up here. Okay, ready?
So I had now listen. I didn't know that much about you until a few days ago, except that
do your own
and
research.
I started doing like a deep dive on Dave Smith. And I was surprised that there are a lot of things that I really don't agree with you on, because I always figured I would, because you're libertarian. I have libertarian tendencies. You're anti-woke.
Can we define exactly what libertarian is? Because I've never been 100% on that.
Well, I would, if I were to define it, I would say libertarianism is the belief in self-ownership, private property rights, and the non-aggression principle, and that everything else is kind of extrapolated from there. But generally speaking, people who believe in very small government, free markets, non-intervention.
And I put it
like
my general interface with it. I agree with all that. Is that people should be free to do whatever the fuck they want to do as long as they're not hurting somebody. Like in a very, very
and to be more specific than hurting, because hurting could be like dumping someone, encroaching on them.
Okay, perfect little answer. I don't know if you guys all believe in the nap anymore. You know, there's always people talking about that. Okay, let's go a little bit further on here. This is the first gotcha we got. It's Nick Fuentes field, Dave Smith, and by the way, this is why this interview is great, because I don't think when you're coming into a situation like this, you're not prepared. At least Dave, I think he said, "Hey, let's talk about the Comedy Cellar thing. Let's talk about Israel." And then he hits him with this. He hits him with a Tucker one. He hits him with some Ukraine stuff. And we'll keep going there. Okay, first of all, Alan says Laura Loomer is just compensating for her tiny penis. Okay. Jay Forte said the nap is gay. Are you talking about Judge Napolitano? How dare you? Okay, and I think he is.
This
okay.
guy, Nick Fuentes. You have on your show. Now wait. Now listen. Okay. So before we play, hold on. Before we play, I want to say this. I think you're absolutely right to have these guys on the show. I don't believe in the fact that you shouldn't platform people. I think you should have every fucking Nazi and KKK member in the world on the show. So that's why I am like I had Norman Finkelstein on this show, and I got a lot of grief from very influential Jewish people, like trying to say, what the hell are you doing? You shouldn't be. And I'm like, fuck you. Do we believe we've been complaining for 5 years about all these people like hecklers vetoes and people chasing people out of things because they don't agree with them. And now was that just opportunistic? Like, yeah, I believe in this stuff. But what I don't agree with is that we should have these people on to normalize them and not challenge them.
Okay, that's a setup to the Nick stuff. I'm sorry, I'm breaking a lot of these things up because what I want to make sure we're doing here is getting as much in as we can. So that's a good setup. Now, I mentioned here he owns the Comedy Cellar. People come into the Comedy Cellar, and do stand up. Is he platforming that? Look, we want to have everyone there, but if someone's saying some vile things, bad jokes, are you considered? Is it associating with you, Noam? I don't know. Okay, here's the gotcha one. Ready, go with the Nick clips.
Way. So anyway, play this little clip and you tell me what you think. Okay.
It's not simply to say, well, I hate blacks and Jews and gays and all of that. I mean, I think the truth is that might describe some people, but it really doesn't describe everybody. And I honestly don't think it describes Nick. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I really don't think it does.
When a Christian talks, when a Christian quotes the Bible in America, you sit your ass down, Jew boy. This is America. This is a Christian country. This isn't Israel where they tried to ban the gospel. You made your money here, but you're not home.
And, Hitler talked about the same thing. It's that when you look at a truly open society, a truly liberal, international, open society, that tends to be where the Jewish diaspora feels the most comfortable. And so they have this sort of histrionic fear of nationalism or of white solidarity because they recognize that in any kind of country that's Christian nationalist, or God forbid, if there's a white nation, well, they're going to stick out like a sore thumb and be the aliens. So it sort of behooves them for a country to be as diverse and sort of Star Wars cantina as possible.
Enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, they had to drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal. Oh, no, they had to go to a different school. Their water fountain in that famous picture was worse. Who cares? Grow up. Drink out of
we get the point. We get the point. What's your feeling of it? Did you just misspeak, or you actually don't think he hates blacks and Jews?
This is well. Hear Dave's point. And by the way, I didn't catch this to begin with, and it's quite obvious if you look at because Nick Fuentes has been on Dave's show at least twice.
Well, okay. So if you go back to the first clip that was a few seconds there, the only one I'm involved in, you might notice at the bottom of the screen it says Nick Fuentes verse Dave Smith because this is a 2-hour debate that we did.
Right.
And the final, my closing statement of it was to kind of employ Nick and his young audience to reject racialism and all of this kind of collectivist nonsense because it leads to really stupid places. Now,
but do you think he's an anti-Semite?
I don't know. I don't really know.
So
what
what
you're
would
doing here,
indicate an
well, listen, again, I'm just saying I don't know. What you're doing here, right, is you're splicing one little clip of me with the worst clips you could find of this guy who is, I think, 23 years old and is clearly doing some type of like right-wing shock jock thing. It's just like with all the internet comments, it's kind of difficult to tell who here is genuinely hates Jewish people, who here is trolling and saying the most offensive thing they can think of, who here is like some kid whose stepdad just beat the shit out of him and is like venting online. So I don't know. I guess in that moment that you showed me, I was kind of like presuming the best of you, assuming you're not
that's
actually
fine. That's fine. But I'm asking you now, now that you've had more experience.
I just gave you the answer. I don't know. And I haven't had more experience. I've heard you play 30 seconds of random clips completely isolated.
He went on the Jews a lot on your show, and then I imagine you've heard him on other shows.
He didn't go in on the Jews a lot on my show. He didn't. In fact, we didn't talk about that.
Have you heard him on other shows? I mean,
I've never watched a full episode of anything he's done. I've seen the hits or whatever that get posted. Oh, sure. But also a lot of them are just kind of like, it's a little bit difficult to tell. And with that whole Groyper movement, it's kind of, they're very young, very male, and they're very sarcastic.
Like the Hitler Youth.
Well, the Hitler Youth weren't very sarcastic.
No.
Okay, so here's what I love about that section, which is Dave isn't going to back down. I'm sure a lot of people would come on there, maybe they don't remember everything, and so they're going to hear something like that, and they're like, look, I'm going to protect myself a little bit, and soften the edges. And Dave's just like, fuck you. I'm not backing down. That's not what I believe. Then, stop trying to use this against me and, figure it out for yourself. And by the way, if Noam had done a lot of his own research, which he says he's watched tons of these things, then he should have realized that was a debate. And what was Dave saying? And when he had him on his show, did they actually talk about Israel? So you can say these things, but when someone's well knowledge, and I'm blowing smoke up Dave's ass here, basically, it's a little bit tougher. Okay, let's go on here. I'm going to continue with the Nick stuff. I'm going to skip some of the libertarian questions because we've seen all that. It is interesting. It's always interesting to see people come into this space or to have Dave on and then to make, like he said, I believe in a lot of things libertarian. And then as you walk through, you go like, no, you don't.
Isn't what he's doing dangerous?
Nick.
Yeah. I mean, there's, I suppose. Yeah. I think almost anybody who is advocating any type of politics that are authoritarian, you could say, are dangerous, but there is a hierarchy of dangers, and usually that is determined by who actually has power to implement their policies. So, for example,
they don't get power without having grassroots support.
Yeah, okay, but for example,
that's an important point.
Okay, but let me just say what I'm saying. If there's a homeless guy outside who would have killed 10 million Jews if he was in charge of Nazi Germany, he's not a threat the way Adolf Hitler is because he actually was in charge. He did have power. I see Nick Fuentes and his supporters having zero political power in this country. There is
lunch with Trump.
Yeah, he had one dinner with Donald Trump where he was brought by Kanye West.
Right, he's in
the most famous guy. No, the most famous guy in America brought him there, or the two most.
Can I put one more thing on your mind?
And then he got kicked out when they figured out who he was.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe that was a bad point. Can I ask you a question? Is it possible from his point of view and from what's the other guy you had on, Richard Spencer, who is not a kid and says basically the same stuff? I just cut out some of the Richard Spencer videos because I didn't want to make it so long. Respectfully now, is it possible that they see you as a useful idiot?
I think he meant juiceful idiot or useful idiot.
Useful idiot meaning here's the Jew who will have us on, laugh with us, say that we're not anti-Semitic. He goes out there and everybody sees it. If it's okay with the Jews, it's the precise kind of, it is actually a precise use of the term useful idiot when it's usually not used properly. Like behind your back, I can just imagine him saying, this fucking sucker Jew has me on the show and I get to say all this stuff and he doesn't even care.
It's possible.
Don't you worry about that?
I worry about that. Well, it's possible they say stuff like that behind my back, or I guess it's possible, as you said, that they're using me or in some way like that. It's also possible that these guys, that maybe me being a little bit younger than you, and these guys being a little younger than me, say the Fuentes fans, that maybe I have a little bit more insight into like what their mentality is than you do, and maybe it's possible, just possible, that their entire energy source is your outrage against them. And that as soon as you sit down with them and you kind of remove that from the table and you go, listen, I'm not outraged. I'm not like giving you this, like, because that's where all their energy comes from, is that everybody's like, oh my God, we can't handle what they're saying. And then I just sit there and remove all of that and say, let's have a conversation. And I'll tell you, the truth is that I've gotten I mean, I can't tell you how many messages from people who were like, I was going down the alt-right pipeline until I saw your interview with Richard Spencer, and then I kind of came back and saw that actually you were making some good points. And the thing that I did in the Richard Spencer interview, which literally was, I think, what exposed him the most, because I had never seen anyone do this before, and this is what I wanted to do, is I just had a friendly conversation with him. I was like, I'm just going to treat you like a gentleman as long as you treat me like a gentleman. We talked about what ideas we agreed on, what ideas we didn't agree on, and then at one point I went to him, and I went, okay, so you want to create an ethno-state in the United States of America. This seems like a pretty far-fetched idea. How are you going to create that? What level of violence are you comfortable with using in order to drive all these non-white people out?
What did he say?
And he refused to answer. Yeah. He just refused to answer. And then a lot of people kind of said they saw that as being like an exposure.
I think you're right for having these
so
guys
I don't know. You know, you could always say like, oh, is it possible that by having pleasant conversations with these guys, you're being duped, you're the useful idiot, and you're normalizing this now? I'd say that certainly when I had Richard Spencer on, he had a bigger following than I did. And Nick Fuentes, I don't know because he's been kicked off everything, but I think has a pretty big following. So it's not as if I'm like amplifying these guys' message. I think if anything, to some degree, I see these guys as being like radical dissidents of the current order. And I think it's correct to be a radical dissident of this order. They're doing it in all the wrong way. And I'd want them to come over to you know, like my side, but not really them as much as their audience.
By the way, he's almost exactly in the middle of me and you. But go ahead. And I'm not outraged, but go ahead. But
okay, let's keep going on from there. Okay, I mean, there's a yeah, you miss Andy. Me too. He called me today, and I ignored his call because family and I, we were going out. We went to Topgolf. So there we go. JC says, does he not realize Spencer is a Fed who is a real useful idiot here? Yeah. True. So look, this is a fine line, and I hate the kind of what he's doing here, which is, yeah, you should have them on, but you're not pushing back. Well, you know what? Not every episode is a debate, and sometimes when, and I've done this, you know, Pete came on here. I disagreed with him about a lot of stuff, and I let him rant on. You kind of push back on some things that maybe you just feel, but for the most part, unless it's a debate, I don't know that you need to do necessarily. Sometimes you just like letting them talk. You know, Michael Malice is one person that does this, and you can see from, you know, he has people from both political sides. He didn't push back on Cenk. He didn't push back on, you know, some of these other people that he has on. And I'm sure he doesn't agree with them. And I'm not saying he's the best example, but sometimes it's just letting them talk and you get a full unfettered idea of what that is. That's what it is. Nick Fuentes on there, Spencer on there, Ben Burgess on there. Do you think Dave is on either one of those? No. So there you go. Alan says, I don't have guests to debate. I have guests so I don't have to talk. Exactly. Oh, by the way, Anna Banana Republic is on here. She's commenting from Twitter. You can do that now. You can make comments on the Twitter if you're watching it there, and we will be able to see and post it up here. Okay, let's keep on going. I'm skipping over some of this stuff. I decided to skip over some libertarian. My dog's talking in here. We're going to go to the Ukraine issue, and that's where we start on the next kind of segment of thing, Ukraine. I'm not going to play a ton of Ukraine. We've had this, but Noam does try to do some more gotchas, so it's important for us to get some of these in here as well. Okay, Ukraine.
Something you did on Rogan about Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's unfair to you. I didn't do it to be unfair to you. I did it to just like give it the caps. Like, can you play that, Max? But if it is unfair to you, I'm not the type of person to clip things unfairly or try.
Was it Rogan or was it Carlson?
Maybe I did.
By the way, he's not right, because what did he just do there about the Nick Fuentes? I don't think that's not a fair clipping at all. What he just did, he's like, hey, you're platforming these guys, and Dave was on a show with him, a debate, and then you go on and play him playing. And by the way, I don't know if you look at Nick every time. I don't know if you ever seen The Simpsons, where there was a hidden camera video of an interrogation on Homer, and the clock in the background, it's edited so bad that the clock skips forward, it skips back to make it look like he's saying some really bad stuff. That reminded me of the Nick there, where it's like he says one thing, he's got a mustache, then he doesn't have, and then his hair's short, and then it's longer. It's like, I don't know, the show me the progression, show me it in chronological order. Maybe he's getting worse, maybe he's getting better. He's getting worse. Just letting you know. Okay, let's go on this one. Ukraine.
Maybe I didn't actually give it to you.
Oh, you gave it to him.
All right, maybe I screwed up. There's nothing there about Ukraine.
There's just the map, just the map of NATO and the.
Oh, what a schmuck! Nick Fuentes is right. Okay.
Okay. Careful, you're normalizing him.
Well, Nick Fuentes never said Jews were dumb.
No, I'm kidding. All right, so
you could just tell me what it was I
yeah,
said.
no.
What you objected.
I had a nice thing. We had each point. So your points are all right. Your first part was
a little edit.
Let's just start from the second part. You feel that in many ways the West provoked Putin into this action. And you construct it in the same way Roger Waters does. You do say, of course, Russia had no legal right to invade Ukraine, which almost feels to me like a disclaimer. I'm sure it's something more than a disclaimer too, but it's something you feel like you have to acknowledge that. But then you spend, if that's 1 minute, you'll spend the next 15 minutes talking about all the ways that this is our fault.
Right. Well, I don't necessarily think it's our fault, but yeah, the DC and NATO for sure.
So, and you make a lot of this not 1 inch thing, which in my opinion, you get that completely wrong. Completely wrong, but I'm going to let you say it because the interview was a year ago, I think, where you talked about Ukraine.
It might have been.
So I'm going to allow for the fact that maybe you don't even have the same opinion exactly now. But what is your opinion on our contribution to this thing in Ukraine?
Well, I mean, first off, I think I get the 1 inch thing completely right. But regardless of that,
well, what is the 1 inch thing?
So it's in and this was basically it was kind of almost like reported by people who were there at the time. But now we can just go look. The documents have been declassified, and I mean, I don't have the links on me now. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but that basically in 1990 and in 1991. So this was right after the Cold War ended, and kind of during or right before the process of the Soviet Union collapsing. That there were these what they call them, the 2+4 meetings. There's a series of meetings.
This is the first mistake. This was not after the Cold War ended. This was
it was.
No, this was 1990 when the Berlin Wall fell.
Right, the Cold War ended in 89.
No, the Soviet Union didn't dissolve until
91.
Until like a year and a half after that. And at the time the Berlin Wall fell, and they were negotiating with Russia about what would happen with East Germany.
Yes,
so it was not a foregone conclusion that the Soviet Union was on its way out.
Well, that's right. No, okay. I didn't say that though. I said it was after the Cold War, right before the Soviet Union ended up collapsing. Okay, so yes, you're right. So the negotiations were about Germany and the reunification of Germany.
The Cold War is still going on. I mean, there's no end of the Cold War.
Google the end of the Cold War.
There's no official end of the Cold War, but so long as the Soviet Union still, I would say that the end of the Cold.
So, and by the way, I just give you some taste on the Ukraine stuff. I do encourage you to go watch this entire thing, right? Because part of the reason why is stuff like that, which is you're completely wrong. And then what does it come out to? It's your definition of when the Cold War ended. Well, Google went, well, there is no official end. Okay, so you in your mind have decided it's this date, and then once again, he's doing his own research, but I think his own intelligence operative is himself. By the way, it is interesting if you go, because I don't know if I have it in the clips here. When you really break down and listen to some of the stuff he says, when his references, he's like, I talked to someone high up in the Israeli government. I talked to someone high up at Israeli, and I'm like, holy shit. By the way, he never talks to someone high up in Arab anything, so he has a little bit. Let's go to some of these questions over here. Anna says she was over on Twitter all by her lonesome. Yeah, look, YouTube, I'd love to get away from YouTube, and I should probably pull up the Rumble chat just to make sure, because we got a decent amount here. Because I monitor that when I do the producing for Tower Gang, so I'm monitoring that pretty good, but not on this one because I'm trying to actually do it. This guy is so pedantic. Yes. I recommended Tyler to have a Jones Plantation watch party. Look, we're going to do that. James Gentleman and I, he wanted to do that. He said something about it on Twitter because I did watch the Alongside Night movie, and Jay Fort and I are going to do a tour de pharmacy. Okay, so we'll check that one out. However, the Jones Plantation guys themselves reached out to me and said, hey, can you give it, even though we don't believe in IP, can you give it 6 months? Give some people a chance to just watch this thing and then do it. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And matter of fact, they said they'd give me a code and I'll get a little bit of a discount. Okay, you have to argue about crossed T's and dotted I's when you're wrong about all the content. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's what I was thinking, District for a W. I talked to someone high up in Nazi Germany, Hitler, and he said the Jews are bad. Case closed. Yeah, Jones Plantation. I haven't seen it yet, and we will check that out. Okay, we're going to keep going here, because that's what we do. We're only 40 minutes into this, but we're cruising, because I'm skipping around, and I'm trying to get to all the hot, spicy pieces. This one's tagged Dictator Thugs.
And Russia invaded Chechnya. Provocations. Now Poland and the Baltics, wherever, I don't remember, Estonia, Latvia, whatever, they're like, shit, Russia's on the march again. We'd like to join NATO. Clinton was president at the time. Clinton was, torn about it. Is Russia responsible for its provocations? Maybe if Russia hadn't done that shit, then these countries wouldn't have been eager to get into NATO. And there's provocations back and forth. But what's interesting to me, you're a libertarian. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me if you agree with this. I don't put, Like you made the argument, what if somebody came, on our border? How would we react? Like, well, yeah, I get that. However, I regard dictators as thugs. I have no respect for dictatorships. Any country based on a dictatorship is a cousin of slave states. They do whatever the fuck they want. Now they might be all right. Tomorrow they'll be horrible. A democracy is different. I'm pro-Western enough to say I'm not going to put them on the same plane. If we are about trying to fight for the right of people to not live under the yoke of dictators, I'm on that side. That's the side you should be on. Yes.
As long as there are elections and they claim that the confrontation is about spreading democracy, then I should be on that side.
No, let me say, that's a good point. Let me finish my little more add to it, and then you can answer and you can include that.
Okay, well.
And you also bring up the fact that there's nuclear risks. Now, nuclear risks, of course, that's the worst thing that could happen is a nuclear war. But number one, if we accede to nuclear risk, then literally any country that has a nuclear bomb can start lopping off territory. So we have to give them that much. The game theory on that is nuts. And then if you really believe that, you should be in favor of bombing Iran, that they should have a nuclear bomb, because then Iran can start lopping off territory, and we have to let them have it under the same logic that we have to let Ukraine have it, except that at least the Russians are reasonable and the Ukrainians are jihad.
Also, the Russians actually have nuclear weapons.
And they have, no,
so
but
that would help.
what I'm saying, if we were to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon...
We're 5 years away, I've been told.
Would you let them get a nuclear weapon, or would you bomb them?
I wouldn't bomb them.
Okay, so if you allow them to get a nuclear weapon, then the second they go into another country, you'd have to say, well, we can't risk a nuclear war, they should settle.
But that's not what I or anybody have heard it said.
But that's the consequence of this. But the thing is, nuclear weapons are very dangerous, but they're never going back in the bottle. The most dangerous thing is dictators with nuclear weapons. It's not democracies with nuclear weapons. Dictatorships.
Well, I mean, that's an assertion. I don't know that it's actually backed up by any evidence.
Did you ever watch Chernobyl?
Well, the only people who have ever used...
By the way, he does talk about Chernobyl. Look, Chernobyl was an accident, a maintenance accident, right? His point that and I don't think I have in the clip here, is that Chernobyl, it was the cover-up with it. Okay, but we had 3 Mile Island and some other ones.
So. Nuclear weapons aggressively were the Democratic
that is the most sophisticated point ever said by anybody on planet.
Okay, so that's the most sophist point ever said by anyone on planet Earth. Let's just back it up so we make sure we don't miss it, because I may have stepped on your toes there. Right there. Let's try that.
The most dangerous thing is dictators with nuclear weapons. It's not democracies with nuclear weapons. Dictatorships.
Well, I mean, that's an assertion. I don't know that it's actually backed up by any evidence.
Did you ever watch Chernobyl?
Well, the only people who have ever used nuclear weapons aggressively were the Democratic United States of America.
The most sophisticated point ever said by anybody on planet Earth.
No, well, you
know better than that.
No, I don't. It's a fact of history. So I don't know what exactly you think is sophist about it. But you're just asserting that the most dangerous thing is a dictator having nuclear weapons. Perhaps I wish we could snap our fingers.
Are dictatorships more likely to cause horrible wars than democracies?
I don't know how you can even make that argument after the last 20 years of American foreign policy. In the last 20 years, America has fought wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, Pakistan. I mean, and we're going to look here and go, oh, the worst thing is what a dictator could do something like this?
Yes.
So I don't think that's I don't think that's self-evident. I'm also against dictatorships. I just think you maybe are kind of brushing over some of the crimes that democratic governments.
No, of course. No, I'm not brushing over the crime. But
it doesn't seem. But look, anyway.
I'll ask a question a different way. If every country in the world was democratic, do you think that would be a more stable world than the world we have now?
Quite possibly.
Possibly, or for sure?
Well, no, because, there's actually kind of a paradox there. So, like, most parts of the world probably would be a lot worse if they were democratic right now. So the question becomes, in this hypothetical you're laying out, of like, how exactly did we get to this point from that point? Because what did Egypt do when they had democracy briefly, right?
Snap.
Who did they vote for? The Muslim Brotherhood, right? Who did Gaza vote for in their democracy? At least largely for Hamas.
I'm defining democracy differently than you. I'm defining democracy. I think actually you would agree with my definition, but I think we're not being clear now. Democracy is not just about elections. Democracy is about freedom.
Okay, there we go. This is fascinating to me. So this is the kind of fun stuff. Yep. Let's go through. I very much dislike debates, says Anna Banana Republic. It's generally a dick measuring contest between two micropeens. Yeah, and we already have our side. We saw this with all kinds of ones where like, oh, this one crushes this one, and yeah. But I like to see, because it's entertaining for me to put myself, you hear the things and you're like, what would I say? And I'm brilliant. I'm going to say all these things. And then the other party, maybe your guy says something good. It's really productive. It's just a spectacle, says JC. I have libertarian tendencies, unquote. We should do this and we should do that. This is what's interesting when we get, and because I don't know if I have it on my clips, which is when we get into the Palestinian Israeli stuff. Noam, and he did this with Taibbi, he did it with Norm Finkelstein when he was on there, constantly talks about Palestine in terms of they're a country. And I think that is, maybe we'll get into this one. Okay. Okay, let's keep going here. This one is, I think we got another gotcha. We got another gotcha coming up here. 50-minute mark, almost an hour in. And this one says, this one's Russian provocation. It'll be a quick one here. Here we go.
If the world signs off on the fact that it provoked Russia because something that was said 30 years ago.
No, but that's not. But you're totally like this. This is just ridiculous now because you're totally just like skipping over my entire point. No one's saying Russia is provoked because a thing was said 30 years ago.
You don't even need the. Let me take it back because you said the provocation doesn't matter. If Russia.
No, I didn't say that either.
I asked you if your position would change if Russia was.
Yeah, but that's a different thing than saying it doesn't matter. That it did happen in reality, and it does very much.
But I'm
matter.
saying if your position would still be the same, that Russia could change its mind. Change its mind in a treaty. Say, you know what? I want this 20% of Ukraine now, and the world says, well, this is the risk of a nuclear war, so you should give it to them. But we're going to be on our own here. We're not even going to have any.
None of that is my position. And so if you want to ask me what my position is, I can tell you.
What am I saying that's wrong?
Well, I'm not just saying that if Russia signed a treaty and then changed their mind, they should have that. That's not at all what I'm saying. In fact, as I've said many times, I think the Ukrainians have a right to fight for it, and that is their right. It is their choice. Now they're not really getting to exercise that choice because, of course, their army is conscripted and they're forced to fight. But
as opposed to the Russians.
Yeah.
No, they're conscripted too. Again, it's not catching me in hypocrisy. I wasn't claiming the Russian force was voluntary. I'm just saying that, yes, they should have a right to choose to, if they want to fight for their land. I'm not saying that at all. The point is that it's not just that Vladimir Putin signed this treaty in '94 and then changed his mind, that there were a large series of events and that the wisest people within our own government were warning the whole way through that this is going to lead to disaster here. That's
a different point. I agree with you.
Okay, but then the story isn't, Vladimir Putin signed something and then changed his mind. It's more like Vladimir Putin signed something, then we took this series of steps that...
What steps?
Well, okay. First of all, I mean, if you haven't ever read,
by the way, you only brought up the not 1 inch. That's why I don't know this other stuff you're going to say. You didn't say it in the interview.
I said all of this.
Okay, sorry.
There you go. He said it all in the interview. He said, okay. Keep going here. This is an engineered coup. I'm trying to get out of the Ukraine stuff because I think the Israel stuff's a little bit more interesting. But here we go. Whoops. Oh my God. Did I just fuck this up? There we go.
I'll go back to this. I lost I'm sorry, it's my fault. I lost the train. I thought you were talking about the Bush administration.
This is still the Bush administration. Okay, so this is all the Bucharest summit. This is in 2008. It's the last year of the George W. Bush administration. Okay. So so then we announced it, and then we took more and more steps over the years, especially after the Yanukovych government was overthrown with U.S. backing. Okay, so
no, you don't know that. Yeah. It's another conspiracy theory.
It's not a conspiracy theory, man. But anyway,
what is your evidence? What is your evidence on that?
What is the evidence of what?
That we engineered a coup in Ukraine.
I didn't say we engineered a coup, but we certainly backed it. I said we certainly backed it. And there's pretty much
you had said elsewhere. I think that we had engineered it or something.
Well, I mean, technically, if you want to get into it, the kind of NGOs, they take credit for kind of engineering it. If you want to look at that as an extension of the U.S. government, as a George Soros-funded NGO, the same as the government. I mean, okay, he's just the Democrats' biggest contributor, and then he also runs these NGOs. They brag that they got the protest.
What was the catalyst to the protest?
No, it's like the issue here is that it's like...
Go ahead.
So, anyway, but after...
Okay, what I thought was kind of interesting, I don't know if you caught there at the end, he kind of starts to push it. Basically, it'd been an hour, and he was just interrupting him so much. And I think this was the one that they said, no, it's a different one. Actually, that was Reason. Which reminds me of Reason, the new one with Zach and Liz. They had Dave on, and he said something about Scott Horton, and Liz like, we have a drinking game. Every time Dave says Scott Horton, we take a drink. And I was like, yeah, but if it was every time you interrupted him with something stupid, Liz, he would, and that was a drinking game, we would be hammered. By the way, she, she was the one, and I put out a whole clip about her saying that New York was the most libertarian city. And then she has a follow-up where she's like, oh, this place is a piece of trash, but she still lived there. And then she just, it was some tweets that were going down. I think it was Martyr Maid and some of these other ones about libertarian stuff. And she said something about, it was San Francisco, Cernovich and Arn McIntyre saying, look, libertarianism sucks because look at San Francisco, free drugs, and now look where it is. And she's like, oh yeah, because San Francisco is such a libertarian city. And I was like, no, it's New York, right? And we've all heard that New York is the most libertarian city. Yeah, so, okay. 10309, this one is gotcha, guilt by association. I think I missed one in here. Consistent Dave, Ukraine to Israel. Maybe we need to do that one first. Sorry, folks. This is what happens when you don't have a producer. Okay. Let me go to this one. Sorry, we're removing it. Let's see about inconsistencies.
Dave is willing to give us, and if you want to get into Israel.
Okay, you want?
I mean, I don't know how much time.
I thought we were going to talk about comedy beefs here.
No. So I want to talk about stuff you talk about on your shows. So, and listen, and again, and everything you're saying, I hope you will apply to the Arab-Israeli conflict because there are provocations.
I think I'm applying the same principle.
So for instance, we think Ukraine should give up all that stuff on the map there, 20%. But then the same people will say the Palestinians had a right to say no to that deal in 2001 because there was 4% that they of the traditional West Bank that they had a right to hold out for. Talk about creating world instability.
Well, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I think that's what the pro-Israeli side says, not what the other side is saying. That it was only 4% is what the holdouts were over. But no, I mean, I think I'm generally applying the same principle to both. I mean, it's to say that
he wants to talk about your Begin tweet.
What tweet?
I suggested that as a possible talking point, as well as the vaccine and the single bullet theory.
So he tweeted. There's a lot of conspiracy. Does it bother you? Like a lot of the people that you are fellow travelers with. Tucker Carlson says that we.
Okay, we're gonna get into this next part, but I thought we'd read some of these things here. You guys are going off here. Alan says so. Either they are opposing a foreign country like savage invaders, or they are anti-freedom by his own standard because they certainly don't want Palestinians voting in Israel. Yes, that's true. Alan says, you didn't say any of this in your clip. My video, you didn't say any of this in the clip. My video guy clipped for me earlier today. Yeah, right. It's another conspiracy theory. I don't know what you meant by that, but that's what we're going to get onto. This is, this guy is such a rube. He says, look, he's not actually, he's doing us a great favor because he knows a lot about these things. Okay. And then he's trying to go into the minutiae. That's the rube part of it, which is I'm sorry, it's such an elitist type of thing of like, I am so much smarter than you. And God forbid, I would never do this myself. Matter of fact, speaking of Scott Horton, because someone said here, interested in how neo-libs don't seem to like Scott Horton. Robert Barnes, the great attorney, came after Scott Horton the other day, and he didn't go after any of the facts. He just had to condescendingly strike at him. So I quote tweeted him and I said, it's interesting when a really smart, because Robert Barnes is very smart attorney, has declarative statements, no facts, and they use ad hominem attacks, which means they don't have anything to actually say to refute it. He blocked me. And I was like, this is pretty sweet. By the way, he's kind of a slob looking guy, and that's just what I have to say. So Robert Barnes, if you're watching this, get on an exercise bike and do something useful with your life. He could probably buy and sell me over and over. So that's me pissing off the thing. It seems awfully tough for him to expect Dave to present evidence for claims without doing his own research. Yeah. Death says Merry Christmas. I agree with that one. Okay, let's keep going on. This is fantastic. This is another gotcha that I think it just warms my heart here. So let's take a look at this.
We actually have alien beings, and we're studying them and their weapon systems at the Pentagon.
Yeah, I don't buy that.
Roger Waters says that the October 7th was likely a false flag.
I don't buy that either.
Brett Weinstein says that there were explosives on every floor of the World Trade Center, and that's how they staged 9/11.
Not familiar with that.
Right, but I can show you that. The point being that the standards of proof, and then Tucker Carlson will say that, we knew about Pearl Harbor and William F. Buckley's in the CIA. The standards of proof that these guys...
There's some evidence on the Pearl Harbor one.
Well, I contacted a Japanese historian today. Anyway, the point is that the standard of proof of these guys, if your standard of proof is so rickety that you're ready to state as fact. Can you play that little Tucker Carlson thing, that first thing, the right thing?
The U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't.
Yeah. So to me, it's like he's batshit crazy. Like I would not take anything that man says about anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that not batshit crazy?
I don't honestly. I mean, I don't really know enough about it. I don't know who his source is or who he's making this claim. I would say he went a little bit far when he said it's clear he's telling the truth. I don't know why he thinks that's clear, but he's telling you, I don't know, some whistleblower. I think that whole thing's a psyop. Personally, I don't think any of it's real. I just don't buy. I'm just like, wait, so we all got like super HD cameras on us, and yet the only evidence of this is always the Pentagon being like, look, we have this grainy footage and it's real.
And
I just
it's
don't
absurd.
buy it. So I think that now what's an interesting story, even in that world, in my worldview, is that it's like the Pentagon does seem hell-bent on trying to convince us that this is real.
Right.
And I don't exactly know why that is. It's probably some type of scheme for more power, bigger budgets or something like that. But so I don't buy into it. But no, Tucker Carlson, I mean, look, you have to like,
he's
you
nuts.
Well, I disagree, but you can focus in on these one like kind of specifics. And like I said, I don't agree with that. I'd be interested to know why he is so sure this guy's telling the truth. But I would say if you're going to talk about conspiracies and things like this over, say, the last 4 years, Tucker Carlson, compared to almost everyone else in cable news, has been less conspiratorial, more on point. He was better through the whole Russiagate thing where everyone just lost their freaking minds and became these wild conspiracy theorists, which all turned out to be nothing. He was kind of dead on that. And through the whole COVID thing, he was pretty solid about pushing back against some of the more insane tyrannical policies. So,
but he was also conspiratorial in COVID. He was also this,
he turned out to be right about the conspiracy in COVID.
He turned out to be right about something.
Yeah, okay, big portions of it at least.
Well, let me put it this way. I was very COVID independent.
Okay.
It sounds like I'm big upping myself, but it's true. The things that they got right, I also felt that way all along. There was no need to buy into these conspiracies to know that there was a lot of obvious. You didn't need to buy into conspiracies to know that the fact that they were calling it racist to discuss a lady from China was fascist. You didn't need to know that it was obvious that the vaccines had not been as effective as they said. You didn't need to know that it was pretty obvious that they. You didn't be a conspiracy theorist to know it was pretty obvious that they really kind of put the vaccine off until after Trump lost the election. That the mask stuff was bullshit. There's all sorts of stuff.
You could go on for 10 hours on this, but the fact that they were like literally arresting kids on beaches and then demonizing anyone who walked down the street without a mask. And then as soon as the Black Lives Matter protest happened, they were like, oh, the scientists say that racism is a greater thret than COVID. Dude, it's just insane.
You and I agree on this 100%. However, then Tucker Carlson will bring some woman on in a wheelchair, all contorted, and says because of the vaccine, and he has no basis whatsoever for that. And then he'll deny. There's clear evidence the vaccines work. There's also clear evidence that able-bodied people didn't need to take it.
Yeah, it's a little. It's a little murky with the clear evidence that the vaccines worked. I would say I don't know how clear that evidence is.
But this is why. This is exactly my point. I mean, you can do your own research. I'm not.
Don't offend Dan here.
I'm not against
Dan
doing
doesn't like do your own research.
But there's people. But when I hear Tucker Carlson say this stuff about UFOs, what that says to me more than anything is, I'm not going to take my data analysis from Tucker Carlson.
Okay. Look, what I want to kind of emphasize in there again, because Alan has a good point here. And I have some experience kind of pushing on this myself. If my homeboy, I think you mean Noam, is admitting Tucker was right about some of the COVID conspiracies, that explicitly means that the experts and the feds were lying. Acknowledging they were lying seems almost secondary to him. That is a problem. Now, look, I get what he's saying here. Adam Fitzgerald, I think he does a lot of 9/11 conspiracy stuff. He's very good on it, and he hates Alex Jones. And the reason he hates Alex Jones is because he believes Alex Jones has spread disinformation, which that disinformation then seems to, what it does is when you see someone, they're like, oh, this is bullcrap, then they disbelieve, they don't want to believe all the other stuff that could be involved in there. So he's like, you actually discredit the whole movement and what is legitimate because you're so far out. And I get that, okay? It does make me second. I mean, I know people are like, oh, Alex Jones is right. He's been wrong on a lot of little things too. He's more entertaining to me. I don't take him as like, someone that's got on his truth on a lot of stuff. Now, everybody like Alex Berenson, very good with COVID stuff, really bad on a lot of other things. So you take it with a grain of salt. I went at it with Sofine Sofadine, whatever his name is, Safadine, because he was completely fabricating and just horrible research on his book, Fiat Foods, that section in there about anyway, it was really bad. And so then it makes you wonder, what else is he doing bad stuff about, right? I mean, if you're so blatantly wrong on one thing, so I get this argument, okay? With that in mind, it's what it is. I don't know that you throw everything out. Okay. Okay. I don't. She says she doesn't trust Tucker. Adam Fitzgerald. Thank you. In my opinion, Alex Jones is a performance artist who just happens to say things many people think, but are cowed into silence about. Yeah, could be. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're moving along here. Dave Smith at the 109 mark, vax injury. We haven't even got to Israel, folks, but we're getting there. Now, I'll probably not play every little thing. I'd encourage you to take some time and review this if you want. Okay, here we go.
No, well, look, I'm just saying that, look, a lot of these things, right, like stuff like that and stuff with just, say, like vaccine injury and stuff is very hard to actually figure out. Yes, but I'm just saying that they have a similar problem where there's so many factors going into it that it's very hard to extrapolate from that like, well, this was the cause and this was the result. So like I know people who, so I know this one girl who's pretty young and woman, I should say, who's pretty young and in very good health, who got double vaxxed and then boosted and then developed a heart condition after it. Now, that's how it happens most of the time. And you're left going like, I don't know. I mean, was it a result of that or was it not a result of that? Now, she also had COVID twice, but it seems to me that it was either COVID or the vax seems to be the most likely
There's
culprit,
myocarditis.
but you just don't know. You just don't know.
Myocarditis, from memory now, there's myocarditis associated with the vaccines, the mRNA vaccine. There's myocarditis associated with COVID.
Yeah. And this wasn't myocarditis; it was just another heart issue. But it's just like you are kind of left wondering. Now, the same thing
and there's reactions to every vaccine. The question is a frequency,
right? And so, but people like with that example you used, I saw a lot of people who are trying to extrapolate from this because at first the death rate in the blue states was higher, and then the death rate in the red areas goes higher. But the issue with that is just that like there's lots of other factors involved in this too. And the truth is that the death rate right in the initial wave of COVID, right here in New York City was the epicenter, right? And all the cities were where they had the most transmission. But so then also you had the most natural immunity in those areas. So in the later waves, the idea that the death rate would be lower in these blue areas and higher in the red areas makes sense without the vaccine.
Absolutely it does. And I thought of that. I agree with you. But at some point, unless you're actually going to take out a slide rule and crunch the numbers and have the statistical expertise to do that, at some point, you're going to have to size up the credibility of the person who is doing that. And
absolutely. I'm tired of that subject, so we're moving on. Alan mentioned the West Coast lawyer struggles with the word cowed. Where do you think your meat comes from? Yeah, so sorry about that. I'm 2 beers in, and it's Friday. Okay, moving on. At 113, this is why he brought up. This is important. So he's strategic here. He's got a lot of time in his hands. He owns this Comedy Cellar. He probably doesn't have any other job, and so he spends his time racking his brain about debate stuff like this and preparing for it. It's perfectly fine. I do that too. The difference is I get paid because I have clients and I'm doing this in court, and then I do this shitty show, wonderful show. You know what? We have not yet talked about our ads, and maybe we should do that. Let's do that real quick here. Oh, that's the wrong one. I don't want that one. Let's go see if I can find the other one. There we go. Fox and Sons Coffee, everybody. I'm out. They sent me one thing here. Which one does it that I have? I think it's Den Blend Dark. I'm not a fan. Okay. But that one only because it's very much like, and I need to actually bring Steve on, and then we'll have not a debate, but an interview about coffee. I'm so interested. I get the Den Blend Dark, and it's really kind of an oily bean. If you go and get Starbucks coffee as an example, it's all kind of the same way. I like the drier bean that's a little bit smaller, and it just has a different taste. This is like Starbucks, and I'm not a fan of Starbucks coffee. But he was gracious enough to send us. If you do like that, that's a wonder. I still make it and drink it. Some of the other ones that are much more my favorite, so I shouldn't bash this at all. But I'm curious about this, Steve. Maybe you need to come on, and they'll have it. Light skin coffees are better than dark skin coffees. Absolutely correct. Thank you. Okay, let's go back into this. Noam, he spends a lot of time doing research. His stuff about the stuff. Remember his thing about Tucker Carlson and the issue with the what did we just talk about? The vaccines and the aliens. It's for a reason. It's for another gotcha. Let's play it here.
We'll talk about Tucker. I was going to skip it, but this is something you seem to agree with. This. I think this is a horrible point.
Horrible. Not even close. Now remember, it's a horrible point. Okay, it's completely wrong. And then listen to the outcome of this whole situation.
It was a great interview you did with him, by the way.
The whole thing I want is the ability to like have a conversation about it. For example, on the question of refugees, there are 2.5 million people living in Gaza. Obviously, a lot of people of Israel want them to leave. I get it. Whatever, that's their country. But their argument is these people are too dangerous to live next to us. Okay, that's their view. But then for people to argue that they should come here, wait, I thought you just told us they're too dangerous to live in the place they were born, so they have to come to the United States. What does that say about how you feel about the United States? It tells me that you consider this country, my children's country, a trash bin into which to throw your shit when you're done with it. And I'm so offended by that attitude. I can't even process. Like, it actually makes me red in the face mad. It's so disrespectful to my country that I can barely deal with it. And I have a lot of trouble speaking to, like, people can have their views about, is it justified to kill thousands of civilians? Okay, I'm trying to stay out of it. But nobody can justify that argument, that these people are too disgusting and immoral and dangerous to live next to Israel, but they should live in the United States. Fuck you if you're making that argument. And I mean,
100%. One of the things that was really amazing to me was to see when Donald...
Sorry, I lost control. It makes me so mad.
You're absolutely right.
My wife or something. It's so...
All right, that's enough.
Don't even like America.
And by the way, so he's going to take issue with this and the fact Dave sides with him. Remember, he set Dave up earlier. He set Dave up earlier by playing these things that you should just be, you can't believe anything Tucker says. Then and Dave's like, no, I'm still with you. Aha, now we're going to get you here. And you just said you agreed with him. So let's see how pathetic it is.
That point actually offends me.
Why is that?
Because, I'm pretty fucking pro-Israel. I don't have that feeling about the Palestinian people. Palestinian people are not a threat. They have a beef with Israel. Hamas has a beef with Israel. Palestinian people have a beef with Israel. They're not a threat. I know tons of Palestinian people in America. They're not a threat to America. They're not disgusting. They're not garbage.
Okay, but there are a lot. But then, so you're not making the argument. But he's not saying Noam made this argument.
But he's saying that they shouldn't. That he's angry that we would bring them here.
No, the point he's making is that there, and this is factually true, is that there are lots of people who are simultaneously making the argument that these people are too radical to live next to us, that they are disgusting savages and all types of horrible language, and also are saying, and these are people in the top level of the Israeli government, and also that all other nations have to take their fair share of them in, including the United States of America.
But he's also saying we shouldn't bring them here.
Yes.
Right, so he's endorsing that opinion of them.
No, he did not endorse that opinion of them. He's saying no, that's not what he said. It's very clearly what he said. He said the fact that anyone out there, and lots of people do, could have both of these opinions together it lets you know what you think of the United States of America.
So he thinks we should allow them in?
No, but that doesn't necessarily follow. That's just logical.
No, I'm on Dave's side on this particular question. He's simply saying that if you have those two views, you're showing contempt for America. He's not, without taking a side in that argument.
Now, if you want,
he says I want to have the right to talk about it. He says, I want to be able to say that, how dare you want to bring these people over here when they're so horrible over there.
He listed off three. It was very clear what he said. He listed off a few things that he was like, look, however you feel about this war is like, here's one thing. Number one, I want to have the right to talk about it. I want to have the right to think. And then he said, and also there are these people who have these two views simultaneously, and having these two views simultaneously basically indicates to me that you think my country's a trash can and you don't care about this at all.
So the question is are there a substantial number of people who have these two views simultaneously?
No, listen,
which is unquestionably true.
I understand what you're saying. It makes sense what you're saying.
Oh, no.
But the problem is he's also endorsing the idea that he doesn't want them here.
Well, he doesn't exactly say that in this clip.
I didn't get that.
Anybody who listens to him knows.
Well, yes, but that's totally separate.
And he's called immigrants dirty before.
Well, okay. Regardless of that, because I'd have to have the context of that quote. Tucker Carlson has his own reasons why he thinks that we should have more border security and less, unfettered immigration coming into the country. His argument there would be that radical change is not good for a country, and when you radically change a country by bringing millions and millions of illegal immigrants into it, plus the million a year legally that come in, that this is destabilizing to a country. But
it is interesting if you saw there, and he does this quite often, he being Noam, which is he's in a current debate, okay? And you say something and he doesn't know or whatever, and then he misses it and he goes back and watches this. And then they post this up and he puts little things across the screen about what you said wrong or little fact checking you after the fact. It's kind of a shitty thing to do, but it's typical. However, I just thought of this as I was going up. I saw the tweet today. Norm Finkelstein put this up. It's Ben Shapiro. It's like a quote out of from him. He says, if you believe that the Jewish state has a right to exist, then you must allow Israel to transfer the Palestinians and Israel Arabs from Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and Israel proper. It's an ugly solution, but it is the only solution. Ben Shapiro, 2003. He went on to say that if Israelis don't openly avow this goal, it's, quote, because they are afraid that if they expel the Arabs, they will be called Nazis, unquote. It seems that the Israelis are no longer afraid. Indeed, senior Israeli officials have called for wiping out Amalek and making Gaza uninhabitable. it is okay, Mr. Shapiro, to now call them Nazis. That's very interesting. So kind of on point from what, Noam saying, that's not no one's doing this. That's not what they're saying. But they are. Okay. We went there. We're going to go keep moving along. I mean, this one, we're going to be a little bit longer than the hour today, folks, but that's just how it is. So Dave Smith, Ukraine. No, we're done with the Ukraine stuff. This is getting along with the Arabs rhetoric.
All sides, like people at protests on both sides, just saying really horrible things about the other group.
But I have a point about that too. But the mainstream opinion is not that the Palestinian people are disgusting, and if you would bring them to America, it's like we're a garbage can. That is a fucking mischaracterization of what any Israeli. As a matter of fact, typically Israelis get along with Arabs outside of Israel. Like there's not
and inside of Israel.
And inside of Israel.
Just not inside of the territories that they control.
Right now, when this has happened to the Israeli people, and it's not just what happened, with rapture, with glee, chanting, cheering. There's a natural question like what the fuck what do we do? I mean, any nation would have that thing, but then to say that some refugees, not those people, the women and children, people displaced, should be brought to America, that's saying take my garbage and bring it to. That's a total.
But he's saying which I have heard people who have made this argument, and in fact, like people in high levels of the Israeli government have been saying everyone's got to do their part in taking in some of these.
The question is,
but they don't mean it. Take our garbage. I mean, like they're refugees.
Well, they're saying because they're too dangerous to live next to us that other people need to take them in.
It's
so
such an
he's
easy
just making the point that.
I don't think that they're saying that the Palestinian civilians are too dangerous to. I haven't heard that, and I've been following. I mean, again, I'm sure that there are some people saying awful things, but I have not heard people referring to the Palestinian civilians in that way, nor referring to America as like some.
So early on in the thing, the gray zone, there was like October 9th or something. There was some.
Okay, we're done with that. That chick, I don't know who she is. She just piped in there a few times with some really good nonsense, but we're going to continue on. Dave Smith talking about, I call this one neocon Noam, because some of his ideas, it just blows me away. Okay, let's go.
It's a very tough question, particularly when it's a part of the world that we've been at war with so much, and that I think most Americans would acknowledge we have a whole bunch of whoopsies over the last 20 years where we fought wars that we probably shouldn't have fought and killed a whole lot of innocent
Iraq
people.
you're talking about?
Oh, I'd say Iraq.
Not Afghanistan.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we had no choice. What were we going to do?
Oh, we absolutely had a choice in Afghanistan. I mean, look, you might say that, like, say, the special ops missions in late 2001, that we didn't have any choice. We had to go take out but the idea that we had to fight a 20-year regime change war against the Taliban.
We didn't fight for 20 years. We were there for 20 years. We weren't fighting for 20 years.
Oh,
but listen,
the idea that
but here's the libertarian
regime
thing again.
change war against the Taliban.
Well, this is
absolutely
where they went wrong, and the reason they went wrong is not something easy to talk about. They believed there was historical precedent for this. Japan was crazy. Now Japan's a close ally and free. Germany was crazy. Now Germany's a close ally and free. Why can't we do that in Iraq? Why can't we do that in Afghanistan? This turned out to be the fundamental hubris and mistake, right? The reasons are probably cultural, and they're very difficult to talk about, right? But the intention, of course, getting back to nuclear weapons, and I mean,
well, it also look in those two instances where it worked, quote unquote, in Germany and Japan, it was also like a big step there was like ruthlessly slaughtering civilians in ungodly numbers, in numbers that nobody would be comfortable today doing.
But the idea,
that's a component as well.
Yes. But so that they should have thought of that. But the idea of changing minds, look, getting back to this is.
Okay. It blows me away, but here we are. I did say here, I haven't decided if this guy is misunderstanding things because he's a moron or aggressively misconstruing things because he's disingenuous. Here's what I believe on this. I don't, and by the way, I've listened to him on other things, and I think there's some parts of him that I'm like, he's trying. He's clouded with too much having any. I think it's in one of the clips here, having grown up. By the way, the Israel thing, you can't get out of him, which is. And by the way, when you're inundated with this much propaganda, I imagine from birth, from his parents and whatnot, and you come to America, now America's this exact same way, there's a lot of propaganda. It's really tough to get out of that because now it is your parents It is your country. It's all these things that you've identified. And by the way, this is much more that way with the Jewish person over in Israel. Your identity is wrapped around this Holocaust, around Israel. That's who you are. You're not Noam, the guy that owns a Comedy Cellar. You're Noam, a Jew, an Israeli, and that's where it is. Now, that's perfectly fine, I guess, but what it does is it just makes you so you can't think out of this. And so what you're trying to do here when you got Dave on, you're right. It's not even it's intentionally sometimes misconstruing because you're trying to find all the little, like you said, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, the little problems to try to shake it down, because the premise itself, if you were to take on the premise, now you're suddenly talking about morality, and then puts you in a light we just talked about there where you don't want to be called a Nazi. Okay, so there you go. 138, 6-Day War, precog idea. Another gotcha.
Dave Smith, Menachem Begin. So somebody tweeted at you, your inaccurate characterization of the 6-Day War should be corrected next time you're on Rogan. You had said that, what did you say? I don't have your quote here. You had said essentially that Israel chose to invade.
Well, I said a preemptive war, which I think is even what like the pro-Israel side describes it as, that they felt they had to preempt the war.
So then you quote Menachem Begin saying, in June 1967, we again had a choice. The Egyptian army concentrations and the Sinai approaches do not prove that Nasser was really about to attack. We must be honest with ourselves. We decided to attack him. Now, did you read that whole speech?
Yes.
Okay, so what was the point of that speech? Because it's the opposite of what you're saying.
Well, no, I mean, he goes on. Look, he starts by saying the speech was about what the broader theme was, the wars of necessity and the wars of choice in Israel's history. And so he goes through the list of
Not
the wars.
Not just Israel's history.
Okay, but so he's going through a list of like, these were wars of necessity, these were wars of choice. And I'm simply just making the point that he acknowledged this one as a war of choice. Now, yeah, he went on to say, but yes, it was a noble war, it was a defensive war in that sense, and that we were right to fight it. But he's just making the point that, no, we had a choice here. It wasn't imminent that we were going to be attacked.
No, he didn't say that.
Well, what did I just say? What did you, that quote that you just read?
He said it does not prove that Nasser was about to attack.
Okay.
That's not saying he wasn't about to attack.
No, but saying that it wasn't provable. It wasn't like
it can't be provable. So his point. He starts by talking about the Second World War. He says we waited in the Second World War until we had no choice. He said, but could we have avoided World War II and saved 30, 40, 50 million people? Of course we could have. We could have taken care of it. We could have taken care of Germany right away.
We could have preemptively fought them.
Yeah. Well, when we had...
That's what preemptive means.
Yeah, but there's a legal... When we had... So he said preemptive. Okay. So then he says, in 47 we waited. And we lost all these people. In 73 we waited. He said in 67 we had casus belli, meaning we had the legal right. But we didn't wait. And we lost very, very few people.
Okay.
And his point was that if you wait, it's immoral to wait, because that's how you lose horrible numbers of people.
Fair enough. I'm just saying that this guy took issue with me describing it as a preemptive war, and I'm saying, look, here is in his own words. But in his own words, he's no. He may also make the case that we were right to do that. I would disagree with him, but regardless, I think it's still kind of an admission there that he's saying, like, yeah, we chose to.
Well, nobody disputes that it was a preemptive strike. The question is what would have happened had Israel done nothing?
So let me.
Well, yeah. Speaking of things we can't prove, I mean, yeah, we don't know.
Okay, this is where they twist themselves into knots, because preemptive is. Yes. Okay. So here you go. You're being harassed. Some guy's threatening to kill you. I get that. You're whatever. Call the cops, or like, you see this on TV all day. We can't do anything until he, actually does something. Exactly. Because otherwise you can, one, make false threats, say that, and we see this all the time, domestic violence, restraining orders are like that a lot. But then you get your due process. So you can't just go in there and start killing people. I mean, we'd like to, maybe. You can't just go start killing people because you think they are a threat. Sometimes they're not. So their argument is, hey, before we didn't do anything and it was real. And this time it was going to be real. We know it. So it happened. But between those two, do you think there was a provocation that happened in there that nothing did happen? So you don't always know. And that's what Dave, you can't prove these things. So we had this, and this is their justification, because 1967 was huge. It was devastating. And basically, as Dave talks about here, they've been under the thumb of Israel's been holding down the Palestinians since 1967. And the way the Ben Shapiro's and all this, it was a defensive preemptive war. Okay. I get it.
Now, when I debated this with Aaron Mate, he says, but you have to read the Iron Wall by Avi Shlaim. You have to read the Iron Wall by Avi Shlaim. So I went and read the Iron Wall by Avi Shlaim.
Okay, look, Minder, you come in late, and then you're like, is this live? Yeah, it's live. Who is this guy? This is Tyler. Is that who you're talking about? Oh, I don't own the Comedy Store. This is a debate between Dave Smith and Noam Dworman. He owns a comedy store. It started a little friction about him saying Dave doesn't like him because he passed him over. Dave comes on the show to kind of talk about that. Said online, hey, you're a bit of a pompous ass. I don't think about you that much. I just, you passed me over rightly. And here I am. So anyway, now they're debating this. He grew up in Israel. Now he's in the U.S. He's Israeli. He really takes this on. He's had some really good debates. I give him this. He platformed Noam Finkelstein, Matt Taibbi, maybe even Max Blumenfeld. But anyway, here we go.
If I could have only one source to quote from, and that's the only source I'll quote from, I would have been happy to choose that book. It made every point that I wanted to him. He talks about Nasser embarking on an exercise of brinksmanship. He took a terrible gamble and lost. Israel was paralyzed by fear and by conflicting currents of opinion. The 2 weeks were traumatic experience.
Well, who could argue that Nasser took that it backfired and was a bad decision?
Traumatic experience of the Israeli public that went down in the history of the period of waiting. The nation succumbed to a collective psychosis. But this is what he says. The Six-Day War was a defensive war. It was launched by Israel to safeguard its security, not to expand its territory. War aims
happened to.
War aims to emerge only in the course of fighting in a confused and contradictory fashion.
Yes, look, this is the defense minister for Israel. I'm not saying he's coming out.
No, he's an anti-Zionist.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was a...
Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm just confused.
No, this is the anti-Zionist historian that Aaron Mate recommended. Eshkol's government did everything in its power to confine the confrontation to the Egyptian front. They wanted to avoid a clash with Jordan and the inevitable complications of having to deal with a predominantly Palestinian population on the West Bank. The fighting on the Eastern Front was initiated by Jordan, not by Israel. King Hussein got carried along by the powerful currents.
And by the way, note there that the historians, they're either pro-Israel or anti-Zionism. They can't be historians. If you come out on a position, you're like, you would think this. Daryl Cooper, if you listen to the Martyr Made podcast, and by the way, Daryl said some things I wasn't so in agreement with online, but you give him a pass because he did such a good job on this Israel-Palestine conflict. And you listen to that, Noam would say, if he considered him, he wouldn't consider him a historian. 2, he would say he's anti-Israel or anti-Zionism. Why? Because he says there's bad guys on both sides, or as Trump says, there's good people on both sides. Anyway, go on.
The story: Israel contacted Jordan. Don't invade us. We have no problem with you.
It's not live.
They even there's a great quote here. At first, the Israeli government had no intention. Oh no, wait. At first, there's some quote here. Oh, here it is. The Israeli reaction to the Jordanian shelling was restrained, even at the beginning, in the hopes that Hussein would desist after satisfying his honor. First, the Israeli government had no intention of capturing the West Bank. On the contrary, it was opposed to it. Second, there was not any provocation on the part of the IDF vis-a-vis Jordan. Third, the rein was only loosened when a real threat to Jerusalem's security emerged. This is how things truly happened on June the 5th, although it is difficult to believe. And then he quotes a summation of an Israeli general that he endorses. First, it's the same thing. I'm reading it. So that's okay. So very important for people listening.
But so what's the point of this?
The point of this is that the war with Egypt was preemptive because Egypt had amassed its troops on the border
we're talking about
and
Palestine.
had thrown UN peacekeepers out, and Israel decided not to wait. For instance, Finkelstein had said, Israel has nothing to worry about the tunnels. Israel has nothing to worry about the rockets. It's very easy to tell other people to not be worried about things. Sure. But when a nation provokes, you're worried about America's provocations. Let's talk about the provocation of 100. If we put 100,000 people into Ukraine, you'd be screaming provocation.
Yes, but here's the thing.
So let me finish. Okay. But all that has nothing to do with the West Bank. Israel did not take the West Bank in a war of a preemptive war. Israel took the West Bank in a defensive war. Not only a defensive war, but a war they asked them to keep out of, and then at first even allowed for some face-saving measures. This is the key fact to the occupation. This was thrust on Israel. It has nothing to do with Egypt.
Okay, all right.
Look. This bitch was crazy. I'm only holding her in my basement for 40 years because it was forced on me to occupy her.
A few things there. Number one, so it's like if you're asking me, was was the Egyptian military mobilizations a provocation of Israel? Of course. And you'd be an insane person to say that it wasn't. And if I was a prominent podcaster in Egypt at the time, I'd be like, let's not make this move. This might result in a war that'll be bad for us, which it did end up resulting in, right? So I'm just saying that.
But Israel actually had legal right to invade.
Okay, regardless of that, I'm just
Russia signed the treaty.
Fine, fair enough. I mean,
this is the kind of guy that, look, gay marriage must be legalized so that you then, if you disagree with it, you can't disagree with it because it's legal. Now that it's legal, it's all moral.
If you want to talk about legal right, there's plenty of things that Israel does that they don't have a legal right to do.
I do want to talk about legal right.
Okay, fine. But there's plenty of things Israel does that they don't have a legal right to do.
Get to
There's
that.
plenty of things that the United States of America does that it doesn't have a legal right to do. So regardless of that, I'm just making the point that it's not like a, yes, I would say that's a provocation. It was a very stupid move. Now, if you want to split, I'll be honest, and I don't know enough about the way the eastern half of that war started. So if you want to say that Israel preempted the war that led to the 6-day war, but they only preempted with Egypt and not with Jordan, you might be right about that. I just don't know enough about that. But I'll take you at your word right now.
No, you should read about it. It's a very
I've
crucial
read a lot about the 6-day war, but I'll grant you that point. But that being said, I don't think even necessarily, if you want to make the argument that Israel didn't start the war with the intention of taking control of Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and if you want to say that the occupation was kind of forced on Israel at that point, even if you accept that, the fact that they've dominated these areas ever since is what's unacceptable. That they're at a certain point, you can't just be like, we won a war in 1967, and now you have no rights to any type of sovereignty over these areas. Whether we occupy you with the IDF is our choice. We will do that whenever we want to. How much of everything gets into your country is our choice.
That's Gaza.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Or the West Bank. They occupied Gaza at one point.
But both sides have to be willing to make a deal.
Well, yes, I would agree with that too. But I also don't think that
You said on one of your podcasts that Hamas has agreed to recognize Israel. That's not true.
I said that at points they had.
No, they never have.
That's absolutely true. You can hear them on the Charlie Rose show. Leaders in Hamas saying we recognize Israel under 67.
All right. So then he pauses and puts this thing up here, and it says Hamas leader Khaled Mashal told CBS's Charlie. I don't know where this is coming from. Charlie Rose that, quote, we are not fanatics. We are not fighting the Jews because they are Jews. In a Face the Nation show aired on Sunday. Quote, we are not fanatics. We are not fundamentalists. We do not actually fight the Jews because they are Jews per se. Okay, then it goes on.
Borders.
No, they
100%. That's a fact.
No.
Anybody go find the clip. It's out there on the internet.
They have
on the.
And then it continues. We asked for tolerance, for coexistence. However, Mashal then clarified himself, stating, I do not coexist with the occupiers, with the settlers. Asked by Rose if he wanted to coexist with the state of Israel or recognize Israel as a Jewish state, Mashal said no. I said I do not want to live with a state of occupiers. Now, I don't know that this was necessarily what Dave was talking about or what Noam wants it to be. What this is indicating is I'm not against the Jews. I'm against being occupied. That, to me, is a very revealing comment, and I don't know what Noam meant it by, but we'll continue on. I'm almost done with this quote, this thing here. We've got about 10 more seconds on this clip.
Charlie Rose show, Hamas leaders saying we recognize Israel under 67 borders. Now, don't get me wrong. No. That's not what they said when they were first created, and I'm sure that's not what they're saying right now. I'm just saying there
was one guy who was interviewed.
Okay, and then we're going to go on from here, and I'm going to read some quotes here, some comments here. But this is the problem. It's like, look, because he talks about this later on with Netanyahu, who then supports or has said a lot of things about giving money to Hamas and whatnot. Well, that's just what he's saying. Okay, whoa. You don't want to believe. It's crazy. You either say it one way or you're not the other. Okay, Anna Banana says, why is anti-Zionist a negative? Right, and JC says here because it tries to antiquate it with being anti-Semitic. We saw this with Nikki Haley. They tried to pass 19 resolutions through Congress, state with the idea that if you say anything that's anti-Zion should be considered anti-Semitic. That's pathetic. By the way, I do recommend you go and listen to one of Thaddeus Russell just had a guy on. It's a rabbi something Shapiro or something like that. Dude said some fascinating things, which is basically the definition of what a Jew is. And I sent this to Pete. I'm like, it would be amazing. I think because it strips it down to, if you're not really religious on some certain points, you're not Jew. And that to me, you get the idea that it's the Lance Armstrong where he's taking drugs, and people are accusing him of doing so. And he has this cancer foundation, and they called it a cancer shield. It was well known at the time. It's like anytime you'd say something, it's like, oh, well, you don't care about cancer people, huh? I'm helping all these people. So it's like the shield, and it's the Holocaust shield, and it's a Jewish shield that protects them from any kind of bad comments that you want to say about Israel. Anyway, I do recommend you go and check that out. Okay. Minder says he's against the Jews. Okay. Finkelstein, I first came across with him when I was doing my ADL research for the Pete Quinones show, talking about the Leo Frank case. It's a great documentary about the ADL. And he's in there, and I'm like, oh, who's this guy? He's a freak. And now I've seen him all over the place since then. Okay. Let's keep going here. We're almost done. We only have a few clips left. I'm talking fast because I'm trying to get all this. This one, 125. Okay, we're already set up. 151 in. This is, I call this one Memories of a 6-Day War. This is a little bit of an insight into Noam. Let's go.
Absolutely. It loomed large.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was a teenager was when Bill Clinton, I remember seeing on TV when he had Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat, and they had that nice thing, and they were like Bill Clinton signs a historic peace process thing. And I remember as a teenager thinking, well, it's good that's settled.
Let's talk about propping up Hamas.
All right, we got that one taken care of. Let's move on to the
I thought maybe you had more to say about what was going on in your house in 1960.
Well, listen, Israel was always the number one issue in my home, and Israel and civil rights were actually the two issues, and those are what I remember very much from a boy.
I look, if you watch this whole thing and you hear him commenting and listen to this, civil rights are a big deal, but listen to this.
I remember very much when Martin Luther King died, and I remember very much and how my father was happy when George Wallace got shot.
Okay, so George Wallace gets shot, but you're very concerned about civil rights, right? This is such a lefty thing. It blows me away, but it is fantastic.
And I remember things like that, and I also remember how important Israel was. But I also remember it wasn't until I was much older that I ever met an Israeli who was not yearning for the idea that the Arabs would agree to peace. It was such a ubiquitous feeling among 100% of every Israeli I ever met until the Second Intifada, until that disillusionment happened, when many people began to say, you know what,
Genocide.
like Benny Morris, we've been wrong here. They're never going to change. So we are going to veer off in our own direction, and maybe someday this fever will break, and maybe someday it won't. But there's nothing we can do. Now that doesn't make them right.
No, it doesn't, and it doesn't seem to have worked out too well.
Well, what all the alternatives were.
Yeah,
By the way, Alan says civil rights for me, but not for thee. I had a comment earlier where it's like an ethno state for me, but not for thee. When he was all upset at Nick Fuentes. Yeah, I think we're almost. Is this one done? 152. 10 seconds here.
You can always say that, but like the idea of just like, well, that's it. We have to walk away from any process that will even hold out hope of one day having autonomy for these people.
Is this crazy? Is it crazy to say that? Well, is that Mahmoud Abbas would get on TV and say, "People of Israel, people are dying. It's awful." In 2007, your Prime Minister Ehud Olmert offered us blah blah.
I didn't want to go in there. It's okay. We're gonna go. Sorry, it's not what I thought he was gonna say. So we should have shut off at that point. Okay. This one is, we're getting near the end here. This one is called a Paper Tiger, Israel in Danger.
The thing, right? No, so it's like this.
You agree it's all he has to do?
No, I don't know that that's all he has to do. I think it would be great if he would do that.
Do you understand that the Israeli public would throw Netanyahu out in a heartbeat?
But here's the thing, right? So the dynamic with terrorism is always like this. And in fact, I think this has been pretty clearly shown over the last couple of weeks. But what was the goal of October 7th? Like, aside from just the fact that, like, okay,
to provoke Israel into killing a lot of civilians.
Exactly. Yeah. In the same sense that, why did Osama bin Laden, and he wrote a bunch about this too, right? Like, why did he hit us on 9/11? He never had any dream that, like, he could destroy the United States of America. He was trying to recreate what we helped train him to do to the Soviet Union.
No, I don't agree with that.
Well, he wrote about it and said he was trying to lure them into a war in Afghanistan, and he thought he could do that. And he was particularly happy. At least this is what his son said. He was particularly happy when George W. Bush was elected because he was like, "Oh, this guy will definitely invade Afghanistan."
That's like a song about Laden.
Okay,
but he also said when we bombed the barracks, America pulled out. America's a paper tiger. America doesn't have the stomach to stay in the Middle East.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt here, but Dave's going to say something that this is the problem you have with a lot of the left and the right is it's the binary thinking where you hear something and it's difficult for you to understand that there can be two ways to think about this. Okay, go Dave.
sounds like that. Okay, so it sounds like that's paradoxical, but if you actually look at it, it's basically the same thing. That he thought he could lure us in, we'd be too scared, we'd bankrupt ourselves too much, and then we'd ultimately completely remove from the region. Anyway, Hamas wanted this reaction, and look how well it's worked out for their propaganda campaign. They've turned global opinion against Israel in the most dramatic way I ever could have imagined in my lifetime. I'll say this, I think Israel's existence is in more jeopardy right now than it's ever been in my lifetime. So, maybe not in yours, but certainly in mine, because I mean, I'm born in the 80s.
I have some
Interesting comment by Dave on that one. So, yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's keep going here. Next section we have, this is propping and getting rid of Hamas. You're going to talk a little bit about this, about a 3-minute segment. Here we go.
Well, if we're going to do this, we're not going to fucking fuck up our reputation and have everybody hate us for nothing. We have to get rid of Hamas. We have to get rid of Hamas.
Yeah, but
and I respect that too. Now, you have criticized Netanyahu for propping up Hamas, which the logical inference from that would be he should have wanted to get rid of Hamas. So what does the world look like if he doesn't prop up Hamas? It should be a Hamasless world. So, like from a Zionist point of view, I understand the criticism of propping up Hamas. But from an outsider, it's like, well, if you're criticizing him for propping up Hamas, you should be happy they're getting rid of Hamas.
That doesn't make any sense. No, listen, I'm saying, look,
why doesn't that make sense?
Because if getting rid of Hamas was just getting rid of Hamas, then
Kim, yes, defamation. It's available on Odyssey. I ripped it off of somewhere. I actually have a copy of it. By the way, it is fantastic. Thanks for bringing this up, Kim. It talks about it's a guy from Israel. His mom was a Russian Jew, and she wasn't a fan of like a lot of the Zionists. So he's like, I'm gonna find out what this ADL and what all this stuff is, and he follows a bunch of kids from Israel over to they go to Auschwitz. And they tour it, and it's basically fear porn dumped into the faces of these kids. They need to be to understand how much people might hate them out there, and what's been done, so that they're just filled with this anxiety. And kids, basically, they go over there and they come back, and they're kind of changed for this. They're like scared about these things all the time. And then they say boogeyman everywhere. And then he goes to the ADL in the United States and follows their Abe Foxman, I think is where he goes. Follows him around, he over there. But then he also is like, oh, let's follow a case from start to finish. So they're on the computer like, oh, someone reported, there was a swastika in their yard. Let's go. It's so pathetic, but it's fantastic. So I do recommend you go there. Okay, sorry, back to this one now.
Fine, you would be happy with that. If getting rid of Hamas means slaughtering...
What are the ways to get rid of
Well, right, but if it means that, then I'm saying, no, I don't support that, okay?
So then maybe he was right. So
No, hold on.
So then, first of all, I want to tell you about what the other prime ministers did. It wasn't just Netanyahu.
Okay, but let me let me get a point off to some of this.
2 more sentences. No,
Sure.
let you do. They were trying to buy off Hamas the way we tried to buy Iran off, to try to calm this, appease them. That's what propping up Hamas meant. There was criticism from the right for propping up Hamas, which is why he said, listen, you guys don't want a two-state solution. If you really don't want a two-state solution, you should be happy I'm giving Hamas money, because as long as Hamas is in power, you won't ever have to worry about that. And from the left, he was telling people, listen, you guys should be happy I'm doing this because you're worried about...
right. So, okay, but what he said to the Likud party, to your fair point, kind of the right-wingers there, anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas.
Right.
This is part of our strategy, to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank. So what Benjamin Netanyahu did, and what he said after that later in the quote is, we control the height of the flame. Meaning, because people are going like, but isn't this kind of dangerous to prop up a terrorist organization on your border? And he goes, yeah, but we can control the thing. So just to be clear, this is not Yitzhak Rabin, who, stated that he wanted to have a peace process and wanted to give the Palestinians their own state. Now, there's, as we were talking about in those Oslo Accords, it's not what the pro-Israeli side says, that we offered them everything and they just said no. There was
there's a new book out now by a guy who was there.
The guy who's there. By the way, I'm cutting some of these short because we got 2 left. And I just want to kind of get done with this and then we can go on from there. Maybe we should do a watch-along of the movie, the documentary Defamation. By the way, once again, if you're interested in all this, and I know it's not such a light night, we're watching some heavy stuff here. It's a Friday. This is the way it is. We do try to do some lighter stuff. But if you go and check out my playlist on YouTube about the ADL and the Leo Frank case, It's fascinating. Thank you. But one thing I did in the research, and I didn't play any clips on that, but I probably should, which is I doing my research on some of the ADL and I think for the last episode, I went on their website and I'm like, I'm finding some video, their YouTube. By the way, they always turn all their comments off, but it's like, these are the kind of cases we're really going after, right? It's some high school girl that gets a phone call from her friend who was at school that said she saw a swastika on the chalkboard. Okay. So of course they go there, that it's not there. So now they follow the story of her and she talks to the police and there's all this, big thing in the school. It's like, that's what it is. There's not enough bullying going on. If your main thing is some dick, it's probably someone cleaning the chalk erasers off, takes the big chalk one and just makes some square. I used to do that. I mean, it's a fun symbol, people. Okay, let's keep going here. This one is 206. Israel says they want a two-state solution compared to Hamas. Comments not taken seriously. I have 16 minutes on this. We're not going to do that. We're just going to play a little bit, but we'll talk about this. My notes on this one is Noam calls the area in Gaza and the West Bank a country over and over in this interview with Mate and also Finkelstein. He can't help but think that, but it's not in reality. However, it helps his argument because it seems that the people of Palestine have sovereignty and they don't. And that's an important fact. Here, let's go.
The previous prime minister, Lapid, had the exact same prop up Hamas policies. This is from Times of Israel. As part of his strategy, Israel issued permits to 14,000 Gaza workers to enter Israel with the promise of handing out more if the situation remains calm. Every single thing that, we've been on so long, I have a bunch of quotes here, but I'm not going to go on and on about it. And Lapid said to them, he gave a speech at the UN, a la what you were saying, an agreement with the Palestinians based on two states for two peoples is the right thing for Israel's security, for Israel's economy, and for the future of our children, in his first speech to the UN Assembly. Despite all the obstacles, still today, a large majority of Israelis support the vision of a two-state solution. I have one of them. Lapid said that member states have asked Israel several times why it will not lift the restrictions on the Gaza Strip. Quote, we're ready to do more than that. I say from here to the people of Gaza, we're ready to help you build a better life, to build an economy. We presented a comprehensive plan to help rebuild Gaza. We have only one condition. Stop firing rockets and missiles at our children. Put down your weapons. There will be no restrictions. The Israeli prime minister did say, this is just 2 years ago, exactly what you're saying.
That prime minister also propped up Hamas?
And he was answered with rockets. At some point, you have to be open to the idea that they just may not want it.
Wait, what was Lapid's rationale for propping up Hamas?
Oh, they want it.
Because it's not propping up. The rationale is these people need money.
Okay, but I mean,
and maybe if we can give them jobs, that will calm them.
Yeah, okay, but listen, Benjamin Netanyahu, again, you're not arguing with me, you're arguing with his own words. He's saying, no, that's not why we're supporting them. We're supporting them because we want to thwart the ability to ever give them
I'm saying
a free state.
it would be nice
okay,
if
fine.
but I'm saying when
I'm not saying that's a good quote. I wish there were more quotes like that.
Right,
I wish more people were saying
can you understand what the quote says?
Yes, but can you?
We're not going to just do it again. We said it a year ago, and we got rockets.
Okay.
At some point, you don't keep doing it. At some point, it's their balls in their court.
Yeah, but
remember that speech.
But why can't you just say the same thing but reversed? Why is it got to be the standard? Is that like if any Palestinian kid throws a rock, until you make sure that never happens, we get to dominate you forever?
That is a great point. Last clip here we're going to do. And by the way, Andy thinks he's going to come and join me. That's perfectly fine. We'll keep. Oh, here he is, motherfucker. And he's sideways, like the kill shot. Can you hear me?
What up?
Yeah, how you doing? Steve says this guy's annoying. I don't know if you've watched any of this yet.
I just got in. I was listening to him talk about, I guess, Israel's offers to the people of Gaza or whatever that we know is clearly performative.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I need to do this here. Oops, I'm playing. There we go. I'm going to play one last clip and then you and I can have a little conversation. Okay, this one is no one researches like Noam. I'm playing this one out. Note that he cherry picks clips and then expects everyone to think he's done more research than anyone. He also references inquiring with Israeli experts, never Arab. Do you have any Arab experts that you know of, Andy?
No.
Okay, hang on.
How sincere this is. I did such a deep dive on this debate. I bought every single book, and then I checked the original sources of every single book. I bought Khalidi's book. I checked his footnotes. He's got nothing. Every single claim of this other side of the debate leads to a brick wall dead end where you cannot find a single actual fact.
With regard to what precisely?
With regard to the fact
Oslo Accords?
Camp David and under Olmert.
Okay.
Every single fact makes it clear to me that the Israeli story here is true and the Palestinian story is revisionist. I say that I would almost stake my own case.
Well, again, at least with the Oslo stuff, that's not what Netanyahu said.
Oslo was before. Oslo was under Rabin. I'm talking about when Clinton was there, and then when Olmert was there. They tried everything.
He's talking about all the peace process and stuff.
Shlomo Ben Ami, who Mate and Finkelstein like to take one quote that he says about how I wouldn't have accepted that deal. He's written at length that he says, never has the world, I have it here somewhere. He says, it is unlikely that the world has ever witnessed such an extensive effort aimed to trying to persuade the leader of a national movement to overcome his fears, pluck up his courage, and come to a decision worthy of a peacemaker. It was all in vain. What was shocking to me, however, was that there was no sadness in the Palestinian negotiators' face, no sorrow over a lost opportunity. The refugees' right of return was a historical impossibility. Why did they themselves not encourage refugees to live in a Palestinian state? I asked myself, what kind of national movement dreams of establishing a state only in order to settle its exiles in a neighboring country? How is that a national movement that does not build an ethos based on ingathering its exiles? This guy was in the room every day. This is a peacemaker guy. This is a guy whose eyes fill with tears. And he's a guy who's made, he calls Barack arrogant. I mean, he's unflinching.
How do you
but
know
when it
his
comes down to
eyes
the
filled with
essence
tears?
of it all, even Indyk, everybody says Arafat never came prepared to make a deal. And if you don't believe the Israelis, we have one of Arafat's cronies saying it. So I'm asking you to open your eyes. Maybe it's fucking true. Maybe I'm Jewish. I was raised an Israeli, but I'm a fucking honest person. I will I will face the truth. I didn't want it to be true. I will open the book with dread. Like, am I going to read something that's going to upend what I feel about it? But I'm telling you, I spent hundreds of dollars. I cannot find it. Is Netanyahu is a Jabotinsky? I don't know where Netanyahu is. I spoke to someone once who knows him, who said I believe he would want a two-state solution if there was a real one to be had. But I don't know what the fuck. He's more concerned with staying out of jail and staying in power right now.
Yeah, but look, I mean, okay, but that guy is the longest-serving prime minister in Israeli history. So what?
Yeah, but he was out just a year ago.
Yeah, okay, but he's had the longest run, and then he's right back in, as typically. But I'm just saying, his view on this matters too, and what he's telling you in his own words is that he also doesn't want a two-state solution.
No, it doesn't matter. I'll prove to you why. Who was the prime minister when Sadat wanted to make peace? Menachem Begin.
Right, yeah, Begin, okay.
That era's Benjamin Netanyahu. He was a fucking terrorist. There was no more right-wing figure in Israel's history. But as soon as Sadat indicated he wanted peace, Begin came along.
Okay, fine, but you're kind of right.
And by the way, only Nixon can go to China. It would be very smart for them to make the move to try to make.
Okay, I'm done with that. Andy, welcome aboard. What are you doing? You're muted, but that's fine.
Whiskey to drink for tonight.
I'm sorry, you were muted. What was that?
I said, what up? I'm trying to find a bottle of whiskey tonight. I'm listening to what that guy was saying. He couldn't find a convincing argument from the Palestinian side.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Right.
Everyone in this
But I
room
hardly said anything.
is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
That wasn't for you. That was for Noam Dworman. Yeah. So I would encourage you to watch that debate. I think it's Dave's best, and partly because Noam comes lock and loaded with a bunch of stuff, a lot of gotcha stuff that's hard to really defend, and Dave defends himself great. And actually, Noam, that's that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And then at the end, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm kind of wrong. So anyway, I would encourage you to go check that out. Just rewatch this show, Andy. How you doing? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I'm doing well. I started to listen to Kyle Matovic and that dumb whore and that gay feller's show the other night with Dave on.
By the way, I like Kyle. He came on here, and for the most part, he was more on Dave's side. But that was a frustrating, because it was frustrating too, was, and this is podcast review, so we talk about other shows all the time. She is 35, and she talked like a 12-year-old. I mean,
yeah.
the naivete was fascinating.
Yes. But I've only made it like 5-10 minutes into it.
Oh, you'll love it, Mark. Dickie was on Kyle's stream last. Yeah, I have to check that out. I know they were talking metal before then. This was a different one. It was Brandy. She's the. I gotta stop. I'm like Toad now. Anyway.
I was going to ask you, I've been kind of curious. So Rakita posted something today about the Supreme Court denying the appeal, the Trump ballot appeal. Did you read anything about this?
No, I think you're misconstruing a few things. I think the DA or what's his name? I'll have to look at it again, but it's not over that. It's over something else in the New York case and maybe the Georgia case about taking it on real quick to see if Trump's has immunity since he was a president. I think that might be what it is. They wanted to have a ruling on it right away so they can go further. And the Supreme Court basically said, now I haven't read this. I just read Rekieta's thing, the little clip about it. And I guess I'll go to it maybe. And the Supreme Court said, we'll take it on later. So they'll do it. Okay. But it's not going to be till after. But it's not the 14th
Colorado
Amendment. Yeah, no, not that one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was driving and I couldn't really read it. And, I need someone like Toad to actually break things down for me, especially when it comes to, reading things and understanding things.
Okay. So here's actually what, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. You bring your work home with you? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. I wish I could turn my camera around. You could see my little bar I got going here.
Supreme Court has denied special counsel Smith's request for an expedited review of the case against Trump. There won't be a trial in D.C. before the 2024 election. No mistake, this is a big loss for special counsel. So, yeah, but that's been before. They've already did that.
So this is his voter fraud stuff.
Well, yeah, I don't know about it's specifically voter fraud, but it's I probably need to look at it again. I think it's anyway. It's not the Colorado 14th Amendment, which will probably get up there, and that'll have to be. Hey Emma, Merry Christmas.
Alex says, "Hey and Merry Christmas." You what? Oh.
I don't know what's going on. This goes off the rails all the time. I tend to shelter. JC says I tend to shelter myself from most of my fellow millennials. It's always a culture shock to remember how socially liberal most are. And oh my God, hi Emma. Yeah. So I would encourage people. By the way, I don't know if you saw this at all. I mentioned a little bit. Dave also did a debate with Will Chamberlain on Michael Malice's show, and I got about 20 minutes in there, and then wanted to put a gun to my head. So I did not check that out. Part of it's just Will. He's unbearable to me. Sure,
I saw someone post a clip from it, and it seemed like his same shtick from him and Scott on 10.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I think it's just I've seen him on. He's like he's a little better than Charlie Kirk, but
not much.
There was a clip going around. Was it Clint? Oh, I know what it was. I was watching the We Are Change or the Best Political Show.com or whatever it is with Luke, and they were talking about how I guess there was a poll out about conservatives, and it said like Ben Shapiro and what's the black lady that was friends with Ye?
Candace Owens.
They were
the savior of the white race.
Yeah, but not everyone knew Tim Pool and Posobiec. So they're talking about this and they're like, I think that's bullshit. It's just it's a hit job. And I'm like, I mean, my parents don't know who Posobiec is. And Posobiec is interesting because he talks about the deep state and stuff. And I'm like, you're the biggest fucking Fed out there. he's such a goober. And the boomers just love him. You know what my dad brought the other day? My parents were here for a week. You know what he showed me? And he just loved it. And I just had to smile. You know what it was? It was a Daily Wire chocolate bar.
I was about to say something Ben Shapiro.
And he was like, look at this. And he was all excited. And I was just like, God damn it.
I'm surprised it wasn't Mark Levin.
They got you.
They got his ass for sure. I'm surprised. I thought you were going to say Mark Levin, but then my mind went, oh, Ben Shapiro. Because like in his mind, he's like, oh, Daily Wire is young and hip. Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro.
Well, and he told me, he goes, oh, you're my sister. He's like, she gave this to me. And he's all, and I'm just like, this is why I hate them. They're going to bilk all these retired boomers out of their money because they're making it sound like they would, if they came out with like anti-trans jock straps and stuff like that, they would be all, oh yeah, the right, we're killing them. And like, You're not funny. Did you see their preview movie for their tranny movie?
No, why would I watch that?
Well, so have you seen Blades of Glory?
Yes.
Okay, so that it's that, but it's trying to be funny, and it's not. And by the way, I love Blades of Glory. It's like two dudes doing figure skating. That's awesome. I love the vendor. He's like shows two hot dogs in a bun. And he goes, "Does this look right to you?"
I just remember the chase scene. He's going
yeah,
like up the escalator.
Right, the ice skates. Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything you want to talk about? Or are you just coming on here to ruin the show? I mean, I'm done with the clips. Done with the clips, everybody. So go check out the debate. But yeah, I'm done with the clips.
I guess I'm coming on here to ruin it. I was kind of curious about what the Supreme Court case was, but you kind of nipped that in the bud real quick. Like I said, I just saw it peripherally today.
I'm gonna see if I can find out. I was busy today. I didn't even work today. We went to Top Golf with the family. Did that. Now my kids are over. Some of them are over at my sister's. Because anyway, that shit's happening, man. It's all. Wait. Let's look at this. That movie was gay. Which movie are you talking about? If you're talking about Blades of Glory, I don't agree. I mean, just it wasn't gay. I mean. There was a brother and sister group in there that were sleeping with each other. That's not gay.
Well, what you got on the agenda?
So I did this show. I do a podcast. I've been doing something I haven't talked for a while. I've been producing the Tower Gang. Trying to do that. I have a little segment they let me do at the very end where I tell the guys what their shows they've been on. I'm trying to work that one out a little bit. Okay, Andy. Yes, Blades of Glory sounds gay as fuck. No, it's not right minder. It's not gay. It's quality movie. So yeah.
Emma wants to tell us a joke.
Okay, what's up?
You got the biggest fan? You're my biggest fan?
Okay. I can't hear.
He's my biggest fan.
Okay.
That's a good one.
2 out of 12 agreed it's gay. Yeah, okay, fine. It's my favorite. You calling figure skating gay? That doesn't make sense at all. I don't know why are you getting that? What are you drinking, Andy?
I am drinking one of the Maker's Mark private selections. So Maker's Mark put out a bunch of stuff that basically stores could like pick their own types of barrels and locations. So
okay,
I just cracked the seal on it. It's pretty good so far.
Okay. Anything new happening? I'm trying to look on Twitter. I got a tweet that was flagged offensive, and I had to delete it. What do you think of that?
What was the tweet about?
Let me see if I can find it here.
About time you got flagged.
Fagged? Yeah. I don't have a copy. Oh, there we go. Let's go to the library. There we go. Okay. I could probably bring this up. Hang on. So Cernovich and those guys, they were talking, they were bad mouthing libertarian stuff. So
typical.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Let's try this out. And so I respond
who had oral relations with a troon.
Right. So this is what I put. I said, he's a dope who also pushes to outlaw alcohol. He's not a serious person. He's just a guy trying to convince his wife he's not banging trannies anymore.
Oh, that'll get you every time.
Yeah. Which is also the way he talks about alcohol. It's like his alcohol one reminds me of like someone who's like got a big problem. And so they want everyone else to not drink it because they can't control themselves. You know, it's kind of his thing. So.
Did you fart?
Is Cerno that sucked ladies pee-pee? Yes, he is. Yeah. Now all of America knows you blew a troon. I didn't do that. Did you, Andy? You're muted. I don't know if that matters. This is a problem what Andy does. He comes on the show and he dedicates half of his, no, not even half, a third of his time to the show, and about the two-thirds of his time to fucking around with his family, putting me on mute, hiding himself here. And so there we go. Oh, you're back? Jesus. I can't keep up with you. And by the way, Andy, you have admin rights to StreamYard, so you don't need the link. You just need to log in and come on in. Okay, you're muted. Let's take a look at here. Oh, he left. Okay. Tim Pool is happy to have a new movie called Civil War. Yeah, we could talk about that. Didn't Cerno brag about date rape? I don't know about date rape, but he had sex with a transvestite. So don't make me like the guy more, Jay Fort. Okay. Yeah, there's a website dedicated to all the dumb shit. And Cerno has said, I'm not going to go there. I blocked him on Twitter because he annoys me so much. Does he enjoy Fox and Coffee? I enjoy it. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about it one last time and then we'll get out of here. I don't know what happened to Andy. Did I hurt his feelings? Maybe. Fans of the pod review, use the code REVIEW and receive 15% off orders of 25 or more. Shipping is always free on orders of $37.99 or more online at foxandsons.com. Go there, get your Christmas orders. I should have ordered some more for Christmas, but instead it was just me. So I take it that Andy's not coming back, which is fine. We can't always satisfy everybody. So Andy's gone. All right, Tyler, fix your back. And by the way, Minder, thank you for that. Wait, tell them about the patented sniffle technology. Yeah, I don't have it here. You can take a sniff. That's perfectly fine. My back has been doing much better. I actually played golf today a little bit. We went to Top Golf and I hung out, ate some food, and I hit a few balls, and it was feeling much better. I'm doing some good work on this. I think it's coming around. I've been doing more running, so I'm not riding my bike. But I'm still trying to get feeling better, and that's the whole goal here. That's the goal. Get better. I just changed it. I don't know what it's now. 18%. It's 18%. Fuck, that's worse. That's not. Wait, no, it's 15 to 18. Oh, okay. All right, everybody. This is Tyler, Libertarian Podcast Review. I've got some exciting things coming up for the next of the year. One of those. Tom Woods has said he's coming on my show. Steve, you're out there. I'll DM you, but I want you to come on the show, and we're just going to talk coffee. I want to find out everything about it. So plan that. I don't know if anybody's done that with you yet. It seems like a ridiculous thing not to have done. Wait, the music just went out. So we need to talk about that. Other than that, have a good Christmas, everybody. What else do I got going on? I'm doing a big Dave Smith review. So other than that, we'll be, that's on brand, right? It's going to be like, we're going to do like 4 or 5 days. And then I'm going to do just one day about his debates. Remember all the debates he's done? All right. Love you, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
And now.
Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast, I can't find it anywhere, and they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke, yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger. I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.